Chapter 1048. Saving Someone. Bang! The sound of metal clashing rang out as the sword light that had descended from the sky was blocked by a sudden flash of crimson light. An ear-piercing sound wave spread out from between the sword light and crimson light, causing everyone in the restaurant to cover their ears with their hands, their gazes filled with pain. Bai Ishue's pupils shrunk to the size of needles. He had not expected such a terrifying crimson light to surge out from the black-robed man. Break! With a gleam in his eyes, Bai Ishue's expression remained cold as he pinched the sword seal with his right hand. The sword light that had been blocked glowed even brighter, like a rising sun. Its power grew increasingly terrifying, as if it was about to suppress the crimson light. Buzz! However, the instant the power of the sword light increased, the blood-red light was not to be outdone. It actually blossomed with an endless blood-red light. This blood-red light even overshadowed the sword light. The entire restaurant was filled with this blood-red light, as if this space had turned into a world of blood. Bang bang bang. As the crimson light spread, the enhanced sword light was forced to retreat again and again before it was flung away. The table that Bai Ishue was sitting on actually shattered into dust under the force. Bai Ishue's gaze was chilling as he stomped his foot and formed a sword seal with his right hand. The sword light that had been flung away turned into a long, chilling sword that landed beside him. Forced back? Bai Ishue's attack was actually forced back, and he looks rather pathetic. Looking at Bai Ishue, who had been leisurely with a beauty in one arm and a wine in the other, but was now forced to stand up and shatter the table, many people in the tavern were shocked. Their attention was then placed on the crimson glow in front of the black-robed man. The true form of the crimson light was actually a crimson spear that radiated crimson light. The surface of the spear was covered in layers of creepy blood scabs while a bloodthirsty aura surged out, causing those who saw it to turn pale. What puzzled them even more was who the owner of the crimson spear was. No one had seen anyone make a move when the crimson spear was launched. Could the crimson spear be the black-robed man's trump card? Boom! After deflecting the sword light, the blood spear buzzed and began to spin. Like a blood-colored electric drill, it fiercely smashed into the sword light waterfall behind. With a cracking sound, the sword light waterfall shattered into nothingness. The black-robed man looked at the blood spear with a hint of ecstasy in his eyes. Then a deep voice sounded in his mind, "You go first. I'll call you back tonight." The black-robed man was first stunned, then he nodded and didn't stay any longer. With a stomp of his foot, he relied on the wind jade talisman to instantly transform into an illusory shadow that vanished from the entrance of the restaurant. Boom! Bai Ishue stomped on the ground, a terrifying energy gushing out. His white robe fluttered loudly as his gaze exuded a piercing glare. The black-robed man who was supposed to be dead had actually escaped just like that. How could he, Bai Ishue, maintain his dignity? Very good. You dare to let go of the person that Xiaoyao sect wanted to kill. You're very brave. Bai Ishue's gaze moved away from the crimson spear slowly and landed on a remote table. There was a delicate-looking young man who was drinking wine leisurely, as if what had happened here had nothing to do with him. Bai Ishue's actions naturally attracted the attention of the other people in the restaurant. Following his gaze, their gazes landed on the young man who was pouring wine at the remote table. Could the owner of the crimson spear be this young man? The people in the restaurant whispered, their gazes filled with doubt. At the same time, they were trying to guess the identity of the young man who was pouring wine. The chilling gazes of the 3 Xiaoyao sect disciples landed on the young man as well. They had blind confidence in Bai Ishue. Since Bai Ishue was certain that the one who had attacked was this person, it must be this person. What? I was just seeing injustice. I didn't kill any of your Xiaoyao sect disciples, did I? Why are you looking at me like that? Stopping his right hand that was pouring the wine, the young man turned his head slowly to stare at Bai Ishue as he spoke faintly. The crimson spear that had landed at the door then turned into a crimson light and hovered beside Zhuan. It's this person indeed. It looks like this person's ability isn't bad to be able to force Bai Ishue's sword light back. However, this person is a little reckless. He actually offended someone from Xiaoyao sect just because he saw injustice. Isn't he asking for trouble? Looking at the crimson spear that had landed beside Zhuan, the crowd knew that it was this young man who had attacked. However, many of them shook their heads and sighed, thinking that it was not worth it for Zhuan to offend Bai Yixue because of this. You're courting death. Do you think you can afford to offend the Xiaoyao sect? Since you let the black-robed man go, you shall pay with your life now. One of the 3 Xiaoyao sect disciples, a lanky man, snorted coldly and signaled the other 2 disciples with his eyes. The 3 of them then surrounded Zhuan tacitly. 3 sword shadows were like 3 stone tablets, pointing at Zhuan with a sharp glint. Kill! At the same time, the 3 of them did not hold back as they shot out 3 sword silhouettes, enveloping Zhuan from all directions like an inescapable net. You're the one who's asking for death, said Zhuan coldly. In a flash, the blood spear that was floating around him turned into a beam of red light. It looked like a blood-red python that was swimming in the air. It streaked across the sky in front of the 3 disciples. In an instant, the 3 swords were shattered. The 3 disciples of the Xiaoyao sect were stunned. In the middle of their eyebrows, there was a thumb-sized hole. Plop, plop. Following that, the 3 Xiaoyao sect disciples collapsed on the ground, no longer breathing. The restaurant suddenly quieted down. Everyone's pupils constricted as they watched the 3 Xiaoyao sect disciples who had been killed in an instant. This young man was ruthless indeed, killing the 3 of them with just 1 strike. Furthermore, the ability displayed by this person had instilled fear and dread in the other people in the restaurant. Being able to kill 3 Golden Supremacy Realm beginner martial artists in an instant, this person's combat power was probably not weaker than Bai Yixue's. You killed them? Bai Yixue's expression froze as he asked in a low voice. The 3 of them wanted to kill me. Can't I retaliate by killing them? Zhuan poured himself a cup of wine slowly and downed it in 1 gulp, his voice cold and indifferent. You're courting death. The veins on Bai Yixue's forehead bulged as his aura exploded abruptly. Countless streams of energy floated up like an upside-down waterfall, looking extremely terrifying. At the same time, the long sword that hovered beside Bai Yixue let out a shrill cry, bursting with dazzling sword light. Slash! When the sword light reached its peak, Bai Yixue waved his right hand and the sword light shot out, slashing toward Zhuan. Looks like Bai Yixue is really enraged. This person's combat power isn't bad, but his cultivation base is only at the Golden Supreme's beginner stage. It should be difficult for him to fight Bai Yixue. Looking at the sword light that was as blazing as the sun, the rest of the people in the restaurant were stunned. As the eldest disciple of the Xiaoyao sect, Bai Yixue's talent and ability were undeniable. He was the strongest among the younger generation in West Trench City. There were not many people among the younger generation who could defeat Bai Yixue. Even when Zhuan had killed 3 Xiaoyao sect disciples in an instant, no one thought that Zhuan's ability could defeat Bai Yixue. Looking at the sword light that was slashing towards him, Zhuan formed a seal with his right hand, using the seal of mourning. A sorrowful aura spread throughout the restaurant, stirring up the sorrowful emotions in everyone's hearts. Their gazes were filled with sorrow as they became listless. Even Bai Yixue's gaze was filled with rare sorrow. He then realized that his ability had decreased by 30%. Although he tried his best to resist the sorrowful emotion, Bai Yixue could not shake it off. Due to the influence of his ability, the sword light that was slashed out paused for a moment in midair, its power reduced by 30% as well. Break! Zhuan's indifferent voice rang out. He sprung up, holding the crimson spear with his right hand while his left hand pressed against the end of the spear. His energy poured into the spear, causing it to turn into a crimson light that shot towards the sword light. Boom! The crimson spear and the sword light collided, producing a metallic clang, revealing the true colors of the spear and sword as they paused in midair. Swoosh! Zhuan arrived on top of the crimson spear in an instant. His right hand gripped the spear's handle and he flung it forcefully onto the sword. The sword whined as it was flicked away by the crimson spear. Bai Yixue's expression was ugly. The weakening power of Zhuan's seal of mourning was too strong. He could only unleash 70% of his ability at his peak now and felt weak all over. He hated this feeling very much. Die! After flicking the sword away, Yuan stomped on the air and turned into a terrifying crimson shadow, arriving in front of Bai Yixue in an instant. The crimson spear in his right hand was swung like a windmill, stirring up howling gales. Bai Yixue's gaze changed slightly. With a stomp, his right hand gripped the sword that had been flicked away. With a flick of the sword, countless sword lights flickered as a rising sun rose behind him. Sword of the rising sun. With a low growl, Bai Yixue tossed the sword in his right hand. The sword tore through the air, carrying the vigorous aura of the rising sun, wanting to crush Yuan to death. Spear of Azura's blood. Yuan, who was in midair, bent his knees slightly as his robes fluttered loudly. Looking at the sword that carried the aura of the rising sun, his gaze was as calm as still water. With a spin of the crimson spear, a terrifying sea of blood surged out from behind him. The boundless sea of blood was like a blood python that connected the heavens and the earth. There was no end in sight as it surrounded the oncoming rising sun sword layer by layer, not allowing it to break free at all. Sword of the setting sun. Bai Yixue's expression changed slightly. With a low growl, the sword's aura changed as the rising sun began to fall, turning into the setting sun. As the scorching sun fell, the entire sea of blood began to surge as if it was about to break apart. 8 spears of Azura's blood. Yuan was unhurried as 7 terrifying seas of blood surged out from the air, drowning the sword of the setting sun swoosh. Chapter 1049. Xiaoyao sect Bai Yixue's 2 strongest sword techniques were the sword of rising sun and the sword of setting sun, but both of them had been neutralized by Yuan. Coupled with the seal of morning's curse, Bai Yixue was already exhausted. There was no other stronger technique that could go against Yuan. Sush. Yuan descended from the sky, landing in front of Bai Yixue in an instant. The crimson spear in his hand swept out violently, a tyrannical air of blood gushing out, the wind howling as the spear's shadow wreaked havoc. Bai Yixue's expression finally changed. The sword in his hand was placed horizontally in front of him, the sword light glowing brightly once more. However, compared to before, the sword light was much dimmer. It was obvious that Bai Yixue's injuries were much more severe than what he had shown on the surface. In addition, there was also the effect of Zhuowen's seal of morning's curse. The ability that he could unleash was not high at all. Bang! The crimson spear and the sword collided once more. Both of them froze for a moment before Bai Yixue grunted and spat out a mouthful of blood. He took dozens of steps back, his face as pale as snow. Swoosh! After repelling Bai Yixue, Zhuowen's gaze was as calm as still water. With a stomp, he leaped out once more. The crimson spear in his hand spun fiercely like an electric drill, thrusting towards Bai Yixue once more. Bang bang bang. Zhuowen's spear struck again and again. The terrifying spear light was like a mountain that came crashing down, causing Bai Yixue to raise his sword to block in a flurry. He was exhausted from dealing with the attack, his injuries worsening. His snow-white robe was now stained red with blood, a ghastly sight to behold. Sword of setting sun, die. Bai Yixue could no longer stand Zhuowen's humiliating attack. With a shout, he executed the sword of setting sun once more. A scorching sun that had risen to its highest point fell abruptly, bringing with it the desolation of a setting sun. The one who's going to die isn't me, it's you. Zhuowen's gaze was indifferent. The 8 crimson seas behind him churned like 8 terrifying blood pythons that came from the air and entangled the falling sun. With a crackle, the sword of setting sun was once again annihilated by the crimson seas. Extinguishing the sword of setting sun, Zhuowen took a step forward and came above Bai Yixue. He raised the crimson spear above his head and smashed it down. A terrifying force spread out, causing the entire space to tremble violently. Bai Yixue raised his sword again, but his eyelids were already drooping. His breathing was heavy like an old bull pulling a cart. It was loud and clear in the quiet restaurant. Bang! Bai Yixue spat out a mouthful of blood as the spear came crashing down on the long sword. His knees bent and he knelt on the ground, fresh blood gushing out. So this is the first disciple of the Xiaoyao sect? Didn't you want me dead from the start? Now that you're kneeling in front of me, how can you kill me? Retracting his crimson spear slowly, Yuan stared at Bai Yixue, who was kneeling in front of him indifferently. Bai Yixue's injuries were so severe that it would be difficult for him to even move. Bai Yixue did not speak. His head was lowered and his heavy breathing began to stutter, like he was a patient who could suffocate at any time. The restaurant was completely silent now. It was so quiet that one could even hear a pin drop. All the martial artists had tacitly cast their gazes towards Bai Yixue, who was kneeling on the ground, as well as Zhuo Wen and Yun Yang, who were standing in front of him. This scene would be deeply imprinted in the hearts of the people in the restaurant. The Xiao Yao sect's first disciple, Bai Yixue, had actually been defeated by a mysterious young man in front of everyone. He had been defeated so miserably that he could not even retaliate. "Don't kill me." Bai Yixue raised his head with difficulty, his gaze fixed on Jun. He actually begged for mercy, which was rare of him. He was truly afraid. This young man with a cold gaze was too terrifying. His cultivation base was not as good as his, but his ability had completely overwhelmed him. Zhuan looked down at Bai Yixue and said indifferently, "It was the Xiao Yao sect who was clamoring to teach me a lesson and even planned to kill me. Since you want to kill me, don't you have the awareness to be killed?" As he spoke, Zhuowen's right hand tightened and the crimson spear shot out, piercing right between Bai Yixue's brows. Zhuan brushed past Bai Yixue, who was kneeling on the ground, and left the restaurant without looking back. Plop. When Zhuowen's silhouette finally disappeared from the restaurant's entrance, Bai Yixue, who was kneeling on the ground, glared angrily. There was a bloody hole between his brows before he collapsed to the ground. But the dull thud of the fall was like a stone falling into water, stirring up a wave of commotion in the restaurant. Everyone looked at each other, their gazes filled with shock. Bai Yixue is dead? The Xiao Yao sect is really going to be in chaos now. He was the top expert of the younger generation in West Trench City. The Xiao Yao sect has really suffered a great loss this time. Not only was their young sect leader killed, even their most outstanding disciple, Bai Yixue, was killed. I'm afraid the sect leader is really going crazy this time. Let's leave this troublesome place quickly. If we wait for the Xiao Yao sect's people to come, I'm afraid we won't be able to get away with it. The commotion was like a tsunami that came and went as quickly as it came. The crowd then realized that the Xiao Yao sect was really going to be in chaos this time. The two most important young geniuses in the sect were actually dead. They did not want to get into trouble, so they left the restaurant one after another. After a short while, the restaurant was empty. Only the female disciple of the Xiao Yao sect, who hadn't died, was left. She was so scared that she screamed and ran away from the restaurant. Then, the news of Bai Yixue's death spread like wildfire in West Trench City. Many of the city's martial artists were shocked when they heard the news. They did not expect that after the young sect leader's death, the sect's most outstanding disciple, Bai Yixue, would be dead as well. Everyone could guess that the entire Xiao Yao sect was going to be in a frenzy. The Xiao Yao sect was situated in a huge mountain range at the edge of West Trench City. This mountain range was called the Trench Mountains. In front of the Xiao Yao sect's magnificent mountain gate stood a huge stone statue made of white marble that was hundreds of feet tall. This stone statue was the image of an old man with an immortal aura and a warm smile on his face. This person was the first sect master of the Unfettered sect, and also the expert who opened up West Path City in the northwest and founded the Unfettered sect. It was said that this person was a martial emperor realm expert. After founding the Xiao Yao sect in West Trench City, he left and entered the mysterious Ninth Netherworld realm. There was no news of him since then. Behind the gate, there was a white staircase leading to the top of the mountain. At the end of the staircase, there was a huge square. This square was the famous Xiao Yao Square of the Xiao Yao sect. It was usually used for disciples to practice martial arts here. Behind the square was a huge hall that looked like a beast. This hall was called the Xiao Yao Hall. At this moment, the sect leader of the Xiao Yao sect was sitting quietly on a huge golden chair in the hall. His eyes were cold. Below the sect leader stood 5 figures. The 5 of them had a strong aura. They were all celestial venerable experts, the 5 core elders of the Xiao Yao sect. At this moment, the 6 people of the Xiao Yao Hall were the core of the Xiao Yao sect. They were also the pillars of the sect. 5 elders, do you have any clues about the other 2 murderers? Asked the sect leader of the Xiaoyao sect indifferently. One of the purple-robed elders cupped his hands and said, reporting to the sect master, the other 2 murderers are extremely cunning. Currently, there are no clues. Moreover, one of the 2 murderers has an unusual soul armor on her body. How is it unusual? Asked the sect leader suddenly. That little girl's cultivation level is only at the top of the Xuanzuan realm. Back then, 10 elite disciples of the Xiaoyao sect tried to kill those 2 people. 2 of them were at the initial stage of the Golden Zun layer, but in the end, they were all defeated. 10 of our disciples were killed because of that little girl's soul armor, said the old man in purple clothes. 10 elite disciples, 2 of them were at the initial stage of the Golden Zun layer, and they couldn't kill those 2 people from the Xuanzuan realm? And they were all killed? What is that little girl's soul armor? Asked the sect leader of the Xiaoyao sect. He pulled a long face. The old man in purple clothes looked embarrassed. He scratched his head and said, Sect leader. To be honest, that girl's armor soul was shrouded in the misty wind and snow. I couldn't see the true appearance of her armor soul, but its power was terrifying. An armor soul shrouded in the misty wind and snow. How come I have never heard of such an armor soul? Is it some kind of powerful soul armor that we don't know about? Asked the sect leader of the Xiaoyao sect. It's possible that it's some kind of powerful soul armor that we don't know about. But if we want to know more about that little girl's soul armor, we have to capture her first, said the old man in purple clothes. You're right. Their friend is in our hands, and we've already spread the news that we're going to kill that little boy tonight. I don't think those 2 will let that little boy die, said the sect leader of the Xiaoyao sect indifferently. At the very least, that girl with a powerful armor soul will definitely come back. That's because the brat we captured is that girl's brother. Furthermore, that girl seems to be someone who values relationships and righteousness. We're not afraid that she won't come. The purple-robed elder said with a slight smirk. The sect leader of the Xiaoyao sect nodded. His eyes were cold. The young sect leader was his son, and he was very talented. However, he was still young and his cultivation base wasn't very high. If he had continued to cultivate, he would have been able to reach Bai Yishue's level. But his son had been killed before he could even grow up. The sect leader of the Xiaoyao sect couldn't accept it. Thump, thump, thump. Panicked footsteps came from the entrance of the hall. The sect leader of the Xiaoyao sect frowned. They looked at the entrance of the hall and saw a beautiful female disciple rushing in. Something bad has happened. Sect leader, something bad has happened. Eldest senior brother has been killed. Chapter 1050. Liberty Square. The entire Xiaoyao palace fell into a strange silence. No matter if it was the Xiaoyao sect's sect leader or the 5 elders, they all stared blankly at the flustered female disciple standing at the entrance of the palace. What did you just say? The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect stood up and stared at the female disciple coldly. When the female disciple saw the coldness in the eyes of the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect, she shivered and came back to her senses. She looked a bit scared. This sect master is asking you a question. Why aren't you answering? Asked the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect. He walked in front of the female disciple and grabbed her. He looked worried. What happened to you? The female disciple didn't know what to do and hurriedly shouted, I'll tell you. Eldest senior brother and us senior brothers headed to a restaurant in West Path City to rest today, and at the same time, it was for the sake of finding out information about the murderer that killed the young sect master. After that, trembling, the female disciple recounted everything that had happened in the restaurant today, including the mysterious black-robed man's provocation and Zhuowen's killing of Bai Yishue. She spoke in great detail. Is Bai Yishue really dead? Hearing the female disciple mention the place where Bai Yishue had been killed by Zhuowen, the Xiaoyao sect's leader shuddered as a terrifying murderous intent erupted from him. The female disciple nodded in fear. She could also feel the murderous energy coming from the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect. Her body was shaking and she felt powerless. Sovereign, can I go now? Asked the female disciple. The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect was terrifying. She didn't dare stay there any longer. Bai Yixue and the rest are all dead, what are you still alive for? Said the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect coldly. He released some pure energy from his right hand. The woman looked terrified. She turned into ashes under the pressure of his pure energy. The female disciple was just an ordinary disciple of the Xiao Yao sect. Her talent was ordinary. She had followed Bai Yixue and relied on her beauty to get close to him. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect didn't care about such a disciple. He only cared about Bai Yixue. Bai Yixue was very talented. He was only 25 years old, but he was already at the peak of the Golden Venerable realm. It was only a matter of time before he became a Celestial Venerable. By then, the Xiao Yao sect would have another Celestial Venerable elder. However, such a genius was killed in the Xiao Yao sect's territory, West Path City. The Xiao Yao sect's leader was furious. Xiao Yao sect's leader was very sad. Xiao Yao sect's leader was Bai Yixue. The Xiao Yao sect's leaders were. Sect leader? Could it be the other two girls? Asked the elder in purple as he came to the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. That's not possible. Bai Yixue is very strong, I know that. It's impossible for those two girls to kill Bai Yixue. Besides, the disciple said that the one who killed Bai Yixue was a young man with a bloody spear. I suspect that the young man is from the Divine Academy. The Xiao Yao sect's leader said coldly. Divine Academy? But back then, the higher-ups of Divine College had said that they wouldn't care about the three murderers and wouldn't interfere. Could it be that the higher-ups of Divine College had gone back on their word? This will affect the reputation of the Divine Academy on the island, said the elder in purple with a frown. These three little bastards are from the Divine Academy. They must have some friends in the academy. The higher-ups won't get involved in this, but if these juniors get involved, we can't say anything, said the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect coldly. The elder in purple nodded and said, Sect leader. Since the Divine Academy won't get involved, then it's easy. We can use the boy we caught to lure out the other students of the Divine Academy who are hiding in West Tuo City. These students were the ones in the wrong. If we kill them, the higher-ups of the Divine Academy won't say anything. Prepare for the boy. Tonight, I will make those who killed the Xiao Yao sect pay the price. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect snorted and left the hall. Night fell, and the sky was filled with stars. A bright moon peeked through the clouds like a smiling face. The night in West Trench City was still bustling with noise and excitement. Every house in the city was lit up with bright lights. In this barren land, it was like a lighthouse that pointed the way. At the entrance of a remote alley in Westreach City, a black-clothed young man was walking silently. When he arrived at the depths of the darkness, he flipped his right hand and withdrew a flickering jade talisman, and then he swept the surroundings before he said indifferently, "Come out." The person wearing a black robe and a black hat came out of the darkness. He walked in front of the young man in black and slowly took off his black hat, revealing a beautiful face. Brother Joie, I didn't think that you would come to West Tuo City. The man in black looked excited when he saw the young man in black. I also discovered that all of you were not around after I returned from completing my mission. My heart was filled with suspicion, so I looked for Senior Chung Dong to inquire about it. Only then did I find out that the Jianan trio had actually met with such trouble in Western Path City. Therefore I came all the way here. The black-clothed young man nodded and said, from their conversation, it was easy to guess their identities. They were Zhuoan and Mo Lingtian. The man in black who had provoked the disciples of the Xiao Yao sect during the day was actually Mo Lingtian in disguise. It's all thanks to Brother Zhuo today. Otherwise, the consequences would be unthinkable. Mo Lingtian still felt a lingering fear when he recalled the situation during the day. He did not expect the first disciple of the Xiao Yao sect, Bai Yixue, to be so strong. It was fortunate that Jun had blocked Bai Yixue for him. We're friends, there's no need to be so courteous. What I'm curious about is why Jianan and the other two killed the young lord of the Xiao Yao sect for no reason. There must be something fishy about this. Zhuan suddenly said with a doubtful look. I'm also a little confused. No matter if it's Jianan, Jiasha, or Xianxing, none of them are the type to take the initiative to provoke others. Could it be that the young sect master intentionally provoked Jia Nan and the other two, and was thus killed by them? Mo Ling Tian muttered. Zhuan shook his head and said, I know Jia Nan and Gatha's personalities. Even if someone had provoked them, it's unlikely that they would have killed them directly. However, we can't rule out the possibility that the young lord of the Xiaoyao sect had gone too far and provoked the three of them. Mo Ling Tian nodded and said, It's said that one of the three murderers has been caught. I'm afraid that Jia Nan has been caught by the Xiaoyao sect. Besides, the sect master of the Xiaoyao sect is planning to hang Jia Nan in public tonight. When the time comes, Gatha and Xian Xing will most likely walk right into the trap. Therefore, we have to act tonight. Although this is the sect master's scheme, we have to act. Zhuowen said in a low voice. Let's blend into the crowd and enter the Xiaoyao sect's Xiaoyao Square first. Mo Ling Tian agreed with Zhuowen's idea. Both of them then left the dark alley. At the same time, the mountain gate of the Xiaoyao sect was bustling with activity. Although it was dark at night, the mountain gate of the Xiaoyao sect was extremely bright. Many of the martial artists in West Trench City were walking up the white staircase towards the Xiaoyao Square while chatting incessantly. Usually, the mountain gate of the Xiaoyao sect is forbidden to us. I didn't expect the sect to let us, ordinary martial artists, in tonight. This is the only time. Besides, isn't the sect master of the Xiaoyao sect doing this to lure out the three murderers of the young sect master? It's not just the young sect master's murderers. I'm afraid that the young man who killed Bai Yixue is also his accomplice. I'm afraid that he will appear tonight as well. I'm afraid that they will all be killed by the sect master of the Xiaoyao sect. It's also possible that these accomplices are afraid of death and won't come when the time comes. Along the staircase, the whispers of the surrounding martial artists could be heard. Most of them were discussing the murderers of the young sect master and Bai Yixue. Zhuowen and Mo Ling Tian, who were mixed in the crowd, looked at each other and nodded before walking towards the Xiaoyao Square silently. At the same time, Zhuowen and Mo Ling Tian would also pay attention to the surrounding crowd to see if they could spot Gatha and Xian Xing who were hiding in the crowd. However, to their disappointment, there was no sign of Gatha and Xian Xing in the crowd. The Xiaoyao Square was a few miles wide. 8 towering stone pillars carved from white marble stood in the middle of the square. Currently, 8 huge torches were lit on top of the 8 stone pillars. The blazing flames illuminated the entire Xiaoyao Square. Under the illumination of the torches, 2 rows of people stood neatly in the square. These 2 rows were formed by the Xiaoyao sect's disciples. In the middle of the 2 rows, there was a huge cross that was 50 feet tall. There was a circular chain on top of the cross. Under the cross, a young man who was bound in black chains was struggling. This young man was only about 19 years old, his gaze filled with stubbornness. At this moment, more and more people gathered in the square. However, because the Xiaoyao sect's disciples were enforcing the law, everything seemed to be in order. There was no chaos. Yun and Mo Ling Tian, who were mixed in the crowd, focused their gazes on the young man who was bound in chains. With a single glance, they recognized that this was the Jia Nan they were looking for. It really is Jia Nan. Brother Zhua, when do we make our move? Mo Ling Tian secretly transmitted his voice to Zhuon. Wait, let's wait and see. Yun replied, but his gaze was fixed on Jia Nan who was bound under the cross. At this moment, Jia Nan's face didn't look haggard at all. However, his eyes were filled with resentment and unyielding, as if he had been greatly wronged. Zhuon knew that Jia Nan had the immortal armor soul. It could be said that even if he wanted to die, it wouldn't be that easy. Therefore, he wanted to see what the Xiaoyao sect's leader was up to. Dang dang dang. Chapter 1051. Face to face. When the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect and the 5 elders arrived, they attracted everybody's attention. The 6 of them slowly walked towards the cross. The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect was at the front, and the 5 elders were behind him. The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect stopped in front of the cross. He didn't look at Jia Nan, he looked at the crowd and said, "Thank you so much for coming to West Path City. I'm sure you all know what we are going to do tonight." Then, the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect pointed at Jia Nan and said indifferently, He's a student of the Fine Gods University. He came to West Path City to carry out a mission. The Xiao Yao sect is the host of West Path City, and we welcome the geniuses of the Fine Gods University. Back then, we treated him warmly too. We also helped him with his mission, but what about him? The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect raised his voice and continued, that so-called genius of the Fine Gods University is not only ungrateful, but also ungrateful. He killed my son, the young patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. It's not that the Xiao Yao sect is unkind, it's that son of a bitch. So tonight, this sect master will hang this heartless and unjust dog in front of everyone, and let everyone be witnesses. Jianan struggled with all his might. His eyes were filled with hatred as he said, "Your young sect master is clearly a lecher. He actually dared to have designs on my younger sister Jia Sha and elder sister Xuanqing. That's why we taught him a lesson. However, we didn't kill him at all." The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect smiled coldly and said, "You really have no sense of shame. You dare distort the truth. Everybody in West Path City knows what my son is like. How could he possibly covet the beauty of two women? Even if he did, the three of you killed him to silence him. Such ruthlessness truly makes one's hair stand on end." When the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect talked about the young patriarch, many people looked at him with disdain. It seemed like the young patriarch wasn't a good person. "I told you clearly, we only taught the young master of the carefree sect a lesson. We didn't kill him." Jianan's face was red with anger as she roared. "You still want to deny it? When my son went out with you, he came back with a corpse. If it wasn't you who killed him, who else could it be?" said the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect coldly. His eyes were filled with murder. It seems that what this young man said should be right. It must be that the young master coveted his two female companions first before the conflict broke out. However, he shouldn't have killed them directly, right? At such a young age, her heart is indeed a little vicious. Yeah. He had killed the young patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. Wasn't that just asking for trouble? Looks like he's still young and insensible. Numerous discussions immediately erupted from the crowd. The topic of discussion was all about Jianan. All of them sighed at Jianan's viciousness. Of course, that junior chief was also not a good person. His style was also criticized by everyone. Some cultivators were happy to see the young patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect die. Of course, they didn't talk about it loudly. If they talked about it loudly, they would be courting death. Jianan looked stubborn and said loudly, "I told you, we didn't kill the young patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. We just taught him a lesson and then he left. We don't know how he died." All right. You still want to deny it? You're really stubborn. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect was so angry that he started laughing. He kicked Jianan violently. Jianan groaned and coughed up blood, but he looked as stubborn as before. Zhuan and Mo Lingtian were in the crowd. Mo Lingtian frowned and said, "Brother Zhua, it doesn't look like Jianan is lying. Could it be that the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect was killed by someone else?" Zhuan narrowed his eyes. He had already sensed that something was amiss. With his understanding of Jianan, Jia Sha and the others, they would definitely not do something like silencing someone for no reason. Now that Jianan had mentioned it, the matter was even more suspicious. Could it be that someone is trying to frame Jianan and the others? Who could it be? Why would they do that? Asked Zhuan in a low voice. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect stepped on Jianan and glanced at the crowd. It seemed like he was looking for something, but when he didn't see anything, he groaned coldly and said, "A life for a life, that's right. What else do you want to say?" Jianan stared at the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. He knew that no matter what he said, the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect wouldn't believe him. Jianan was worried that Gatha and Xian Xing would be lured out. Even though Jianan was naive, he wasn't stupid. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect had mobilized so many people because he wanted to lure the snake out of its hole. If Gatha and Xian Xing came out because of him, they wouldn't be able to save him in the middle of the Xiao Yao square. They would be killed in one fell swoop. If only I were as strong as Brother Zhua, how good would that be? That way, I wouldn't be bullied, and I wouldn't be a burden. Jianan clenched his fists. He hated that he wasn't strong enough. He hated that he wasn't strong enough. He hated that he was a burden to Gatha and Xianxing. Let's start the execution, said the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect indifferently. He was still glancing at the crowd. The purple-robed old man nodded. He lifted Canaan with his right hand and slapped the cross with his left hand. Immediately, the ring-shaped chain at the top of the cross descended. The purple-robed old man pulled the chain over and was about to put it around Canaan's neck. The sound of rushing air immediately appeared. Soon after, a black shadow cut through the night sky and rushed towards the purple-robed elder, causing the purple-robed elder's left hand to be slightly sluggish. Soon after, he released the ring-shaped chain. His left hand spat out yuan power and smashed against the black shadow that was rushing towards him. Boom! The sound of an explosion rang out. Only then did the purple-robed elder realize that the black shadow that was rushing towards him was actually a round rock. Patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. You mobilized so many people to lure us out, didn't you? A clear and melodious voice sounded. Then 2 figures in black robes slowly walked out from the crowd. Although both of them were wearing loose black robes, they still couldn't hide their graceful figures. Clearly, these 2 figures in black robes should be 2 women. Gatha, sister Xianxing. You know it's a trap. Why did you come? Said Jianan. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the 2 people in black clothes. He couldn't help but sigh. The 2 people in black clothes took off their big black hats and revealed their beautiful faces. They were Gatha and Xianxing. At this moment, both of them were looking worriedly at Jianan, who was being carried by the violet-robed old man. Jiasha shook her head and said, "Big brother, how could we leave you in the lurch? We can't do that." Brother Jianan, the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect, is twisting the truth. We can't stand it. Since the Jianan Academy doesn't care, we have to save you. If we have to die, let's die together. Said Xianxing, you shouldn't have come. You should have gone to Brother Zhua and Brother Mo. You came here to die. Sighed Jianan. Brother Zhua and Brother Mo are strong, but the Xiao Yao sect is too strong. I don't want to get them involved. Besides, Brother Zhua and Brother Mo hadn't come back yet. Even if we wanted to ask them for help, we couldn't. Said Gatha, shaking her head. Are you done talking about old times? Since you're done talking, let's go to hell together. Black Fist, Blue Sea, you 2 go and capture those 2 bitches. Said the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect to the 2 old men in the black and blue cloaks. The 2 old men nodded. With a stomp of their feet, they immediately rushed toward Xianxing and Jiasha. The aura of an early heavenly venerable surged out from them, shocking many people around the square. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect was too cautious. Many people didn't understand why he had sent 2 celestial Zun elders to capture 2 cultivators from the Xuanzuan realm. However, the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect knew that Gatha's divine wrath armor was special. That was why he had sent 2 celestial Zun elders to capture Gatha and Xianxing. Brother Zhua. Gatha and Xianxing are here. Should we go and capture them? Said Mo Lingtian to Zhuowen anxiously. Brother Mo, you don't have to do anything. I'll go. I'll save Jianan and Xianxing, and you'll take them away. Said Zhuowen to Mo Lingtian. Mo Lingtian was surprised and said, Are you going to fight the entire Xiao Yao sect by yourself? Don't worry. I know what I'm doing. As he spoke, Zhuowen withdrew a jade-colored leaf from his pocket. It was none other than the 9-fold wind that he'd plundered from the Yenxian Empire's Qing Shuzi. It contained a small teleportation formation that could teleport a person to any place within a 500 kilometers radius. After taking out the imperial wind of the 9 autumns, Wen slowly walked out of the crowd. Mo Lingtian opened his mouth but didn't say anything. He knew Zhuowen very well. He knew that Zhuowen wouldn't do something he wasn't sure of. Zhuowen's actions drew the attention of the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. He saw Zhuowen come out of the crowd and walk towards the cross in the middle of the square. The crowd in the square also began to notice Zhuowen, who had walked out. Everyone's eyes were filled with a trace of doubt. What was this black-clothed youth trying to do? He actually walked directly towards the cross. Was he courting death? Or you? Asked the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. I just killed Bai Yishue. Now I'm standing in front of you and you're asking me who I am? Chapter 1052. The Patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect attacked. When Zhuan finished talking, the entire square became silent. The Patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect and the others were all staring at Zhuan. They didn't even know what to think. Bai Yishue's death had spread like wildfire in West Trench City. Not long after the death of Xiaoyao sect's young sect master, Bai Yishue, the most outstanding disciple of Xiaoyao sect, had died one after another. It was a blatant slap to Xiaoyao sect's face. Therefore, many martial artists were discussing during the day, wondering who had the guts to kill Bai Yishue in West Trench City. Now, in front of the Xiaoyao sect's sect leader in the Carefree Square, a black-clothed young man had admitted that he was the one who killed Bai Yishue in front of the sect leader and the crowd. Anyone who witnessed this scene would be dumbfounded and baffled. The Xiaoyao sect's sect leader finally reacted. Although he knew that using Canaan would lure out Bai Yishue's murderer, he had not expected the murderer to be so arrogant. Not only had he walked out, he had even come to him and claimed that he was the one who killed Bai Yishue. Boom! A terrifying murderous energy emerged from the body of the Xiaoyao sect's leader. His qi turned into countless vortexes which filled the air as if they were going to crush the entire space. What did you just say? The Patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect made a step forward and glared at Zhuowen furiously. He was furious. Zhuowen's actions were beyond arrogant. If he had appeared like Gatha and Xian Xing, the Patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect would not have been so furious. However, this young man was standing in front of the Patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect and claiming that he was the one who had killed Bai Yishue. He was extremely arrogant and had even escalated to the level of provocation. What? Didn't I make myself clear? Or do you think it's impossible for me to kill Bai Yishue? Zhuan asked faintly. Very good. The Patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect didn't say anything else. Zhuan had infuriated him. He was going to kill him. The Patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect's terrifying qi was like a gigantic mountain. Everybody had the impression they were in a quagmire. Everybody in the square felt as if they were sinking, and their knees were bending. They looked scared. The Patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect was a cultivator at the top of the celestial Zun layer. His qi was terrifying. The young man in black clothes was going to die. There must be something wrong with this young man's brain. He actually walked out and claimed that he was Bai Yishue's murderer in front of the Xiaoyao sect's leader. Is he tired of living? I don't care if he's crazy or not. He's going to die. He's only at the initial level of the Golden Zun layer, and the Patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect is at the top of the Celestial Zun layer. After a long period of silence, the Patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect released his qi. Everybody thought that Zhuowen was courting death by provoking the Patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect. The Patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect took another step forward. Suddenly, a terrifying qi surrounded Zhuan. Then he punched out with his right hand. The invisible qi was like the water in the deep sea. It was going to crush Zhuowen. Zhuan raised his head and smiled strangely. He made some hand seals and a sad qi filled the air. The Patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect was affected by the sad qi. His right hand stopped in the air for a moment. At that moment, 3 pairs of lightning wings appeared on Zhuowen's back. He flew past the Patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect and towards the old man in purple clothes. Am I your target? The violet-robed old man's gaze focused slightly as a trace of a savage smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. He tossed Jianan to the ground before his right hand formed into a palm and suddenly blasted out. Terrifying origin energy sprayed out like a blue whale spraying water, and it surged out explosively with a terrifying origin energy force. In a flash, Yuan arrived in front of the old man in purple clothes. He didn't hold back at all. He used the seal of sorrow to curse the old man in purple clothes. In just an instant, the purple-robed elder felt a sorrowful aura fill his heart, and a sense of powerlessness surged through his body. First level of the bedevilment layer. Zhuowen shouted loudly. He instantly descended and entered the demonic state. His entire body was surrounded by a terrifying murderous demonic qi. He stretched out his right palm, which contained boundless blood qi, and heavily struck the purple-robed old man's right palm. Kacha! Before the purple-robed old man could even react to that sorrowful aura, Zhuo Wen's attack had already landed on his right palm. Then, the crisp sound of bones breaking resounded. The purple-robed old man howled miserably as he retreated dozens of steps. His right hand had already twisted irregularly. It had actually been crippled by Zhuo Wen. At the instant the violet-robed old man retreated, Zhuo Wen grabbed Jianan, who was beneath the cross. At the same time, origin energy shot out from his right palm, causing the chains that bound Jianan's body to instantly collapse. Big brother Zhuo Wen, you've actually come as well. Jianan's eyes were filled with excitement as he gazed at Zhuo Wen. Now is not the time to talk about that. Let's get out of here first. Zhuo Wen said to Kanan in a low voice. He took a step forward, intending to leave the cross. Do you think you can escape? Said the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. He was standing in front of Zhuo Wen. His eyes were bloodshot. He couldn't believe that a cultivator of the initial Golden Zune layer had managed to get past him. When the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect saw that the old man in purple clothes had been crippled, he was surprised. The young man in black clothes was really strong. He had managed to cripple the old man's right arm. After all, the old man in purple clothes was a celestial Zune layer. It was incredible that a cultivator of the initial Golden Zune layer could cripple his right arm. At the same time, the other two elders of the Xiao Yao sect followed the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. They released some qi of the initial celestial Zune layer and stood in front of Zhuo Wen and Jianan. Patriarch, we can't let that little bastard go, shouted the old man in purple clothes furiously to the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. His right arm was broken. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the purple-robed elder's arm was crippled by an early-stage golden venerate ant. He felt extremely humiliated and was extremely enraged. Don't worry. He's going to die, said the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect smiled, showing his white teeth. He looked cruel. At the same time, the disciples of the Xiao Yao sect surrounded Zhuo Wen and Jianan, with the Xiao Yao sect's leader at the center. Brother Zhuo, what should we do now? Jianan looked at the disciples of the Xiao Yao sect and the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. Jianan, don't you want to be strong? Let me tell you, the first thing to be strong is to have a fearless heart. Even if you're in a hopeless situation, you have to be fearless. Even if you die, you have to be fearless. You have to fight for your life. That's the only way you can become strong. If you don't have a fearless heart, no matter how strong you are, you're still a weakling. You're a weakling who only knows how to bully the weak. Zhuo Wen stood before Jianan. His expression had been calm and indifferent since the beginning, and it was even slightly cold. As he looked at Zhuo Wen's figure in front of him, Jianan's originally trembling heart slowly calmed down. Both of his fists were tightly clenched. For some unknown reason, every time he looked at Zhuo Wen's calm expression, he would always feel a trace of security. This was because his heart would always blindly believe that Zhuo Wen would be able to solve all of his problems. That's what it means to be strong. Brother Zhuo is right. If you want to be strong, you have to have a fearless heart, said Jianan in a low voice. He looked at the disciples of the Xiao Yao sect, the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect, and the elders in front of him. He didn't feel scared anymore. Zhuo Wen had made him understand that sometimes, faith was more important than life. You're right, but you're still going to die, said the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect, smiling coldly. He looked at Zhuo Wen and Jianan as if they were a joke. Is that so? The corners of Zhuo Wen's mouth curled into a strange smile. Next, with a wave of his right hand, he retrieved the 9 autumn's wind that he had prepared beforehand. He then crushed it, causing Zhuo Wen and Kanan to disappear from the encirclement. Where are they? The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect and the disciples of the Xiao Yao sect stared blankly at Zhuo Wen and Jianan. Patriarch, they're over there. The purple-robed old man, who was grimacing in pain while holding his crippled right arm, suddenly pointed to the edge of the square in front of him and shouted loudly. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect and the others looked over and saw Zhuo Wen and Jianan. They had landed where Gatha and Xian Xing were. At that moment, Gatha was struggling to control the Scourge Armor Soul. She was blocking the attacks of the two celestial Zun elders, Black Fist and Lan Hai. However, the difference between them was too big. Even though the Scourge Armor Soul was extremely strong, Gatha was too weak. She was barely holding on. The moment Zhuowen descended, he placed Jianan aside. After which, he suddenly took a step forward. Terrifying demonic slaughtering aura surged out as he suddenly rushed towards the two heavenly Venerate elders with the blood spear in his hand. You're just an initial golden Venerate. You're courting death. The two elders cried out loudly. Naturally, they had also noticed Zhuo Wen, who was rushing over. Elder Black Fist gave Elder Lan Hai a look, before rushing towards Zhuo Wen alone, intending to face Zhuo Wen alone. After all, Zhuo Wen's aura was only that of an early-stage golden venerable. In their opinion, an early-stage heavenly venerable was enough to kill him. However, if the two elders had seen what had happened to the old man in purple clothes, they wouldn't have let Elder Black Fist face Zhuo alone. You're the one courting death, not me. Zhuo Wen's cold, blood-red eyes were filled with boundless killing intent. He raised his spear high above his head and smashed it down. The terrifying slaughtering demonic chi almost formed a sea of blood in the air. Chapter 1053. Murderous Intent. Boom. A muffled thunderous explosion immediately resounded. Soon after, the large black seal and the blood spear that was wrapped in the sea of blood heavily collided. A dazzling light spread out. Zhuowen's crimson eyes deepened as the blood chi around him became denser. Demonic slaughter chi surged as the power of the blood spear reached its peak. Kacha! The big black seal shattered in an instant. Then, the blood spear fell from the sky and turned into a wisp of sharp blood light. It swept toward the Black Fist Elder with an unstoppable momentum. How is this possible? Elder Black Fist's face changed and his eyes were filled with disbelief. His black seal had been destroyed in an instant by an initial stage golden venerate martial artist. This was unbelievable. Die! Zhuowen's eyes were filled with murderous intent. The blood spear was like a bloody mountain as it reached Elder Black Fist in an instant. Elder Black Fist screamed as he raised his skinny hands to block the blood spear. Terrifying Yuan force poured out of his hands and formed a Yuan force barrier to block the blood spear. Bang! The blood spear smashed heavily on the Yuan force barrier as a ring-shaped shockwave spread out. Terrifying energy filled the air as if the entire carefree square was shaking. No! The Black Fist Elder felt an irresistible force being transmitted from his hands. It was as though his hands were pressing down on 100,000 feet tall mountain. Soon after, he was shocked to discover that cracks had actually begun to appear on the surface of the Yuan power barrier. Moreover, the cracks were getting bigger and bigger. Finally, it crumbled into pieces. The blood spear's aura was like a rainbow as it instantly penetrated the Black Fist Elder's body. Puchi! Elder Black Fist only had time to spit out the word before his body was pierced by the blood spear and turned into a cloud of blood mist. Kill! After killing Elder Black Fist, Yuan did not slow down as he charged towards Elder Blue Ocean, who was still attacking Gatha and Xian Xing. The surface of the blood spear was filled with a demonic blood-red color. What? Elder Black Fist is dead? Lan Hai also noticed the Black Fist Elder who had exploded into a bloody mist. His pupils shrunk to the size of needles as he let out a loud cry and gave up on attacking Jiasha. With a stomp of his foot, he hastily flew backwards. Retreat? Do you think you can retreat? Zhuo Wen's chilling voice rang out. Then he immediately unleashed the Morning Treasure Seal. Waves of sorrowful curse-like aura lingered around Elder Lan Hai, causing the latter to immediately feel powerless. His retreating speed also became much slower. Swoosh! Zhuo Wen's blood hair fluttered as he stepped in the air and appeared before Elder Blue Ocean in an instant. He pulled out the blood spear, blood chi filled the treasure seal, and it shot towards Elder Blue Ocean. Blue Heart Sea Art. Elder Lan Hai's eyes were gloomy as he formed a seal with both of his hands. Immediately, surging Yuan power gushed out from within his body, forming clusters of surging blue seas that surrounded Elder Lan Hai. Emo Sha. Zhuo Wen spat out two words indifferently. The blood-red spear in front of him split into 10, and the 10 spears fell from the sky one after another. They heavily slammed into the blue sea. Every single spear seemed to contain a towering mountain. The pressure they gave off was shocking. Boom boom boom. Spear after spear. Elder Blue Ocean snorted. His footsteps were weak as he retreated. In addition to the curse of Zhuowen's morning treasure seal, Elder Blue Ocean's strength had decreased by 30%. He could not withstand a single blow from the blood spears. 10th spear. A cold voice rang out. Zhuowen took a step in the air and held the 10th blood spear. He raised it high above his head with his right hand and slammed it down on the 9th blood spear. Bang bang bang. Continuous muffled sounds were heard. Then, the blue sea in front of Elder Blue Ocean was crushed into countless blue powder under the pressure of this terrifying power. Elder Blue Ocean vomited a mouthful of blood and retreated. His face was pale and his body was extremely weak. Die! Zhuowen came again. The blood spear was like an electric drill as it spun violently towards Elder Blue Ocean's heart. He wanted to kill Elder Blue Ocean in a single blow. "How dare you kill Elder Blue Ocean?" shouted the patriarch furiously. Then the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect descended from the sky like a rock spreading its wings. In a flash he arrived above Zhuowen and threw a punch. His pure qi turned into a gigantic hand which moved towards Zhuowen. He wanted to kill him. "If I, Zhuowen, want to kill someone, even if you're at the top of the Zun Qi layer, you won't be able to stop me." Zhuowen's blood-red eyes were still as cold as a demon's. The bloody aura on his body instantly surged to the extreme. At the same time, clouds of blood appeared above his head. Zhuowen's blood-red hair began to rapidly grow to his waist. "Second level of the bedevilment realm," shouted Zhuowen in a low voice. Terrifying blood qi rose up in the air and turned into a terrifying qi. The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect's hand was crushed by Zhuowen's qi. Zhuowen shot out like an arrow and arrived in front of Elder Lan Hai. "No! Don't kill me!" shouted Elder Blue Ocean. "Die!" Zhuowen coldly spoke as the blood-red spear shot out in an instant, piercing through Elder Blucia's forehead. Next, Elder Blucia's life force was completely severed by Zhuowen, turning him into a corpse. "You bastard!" When the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect saw Elder Blue Ocean's corpse, he went crazy. His eyes were bloodshot and his robe was fluttering in the wind. He threw another punch at Zhuowen. That little bastard had killed 2 Zunqi elders of the Xiaoyao sect. If he didn't kill him, he wouldn't be worthy of being the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect. Morning treasure seal. When Zhuowen saw the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect, he used the morning treasure seal again. At the same time, 3 lightning wings appeared on his back. He turned into a flash of lightning and disappeared from the Xiaoyao sect. Because of the morning treasure seal, the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect couldn't attack Lin Fan. The entire square fell into a strange silence. Everyone looked at the corpses of Elder Black Fist and Elder Lan Hai, who had been killed in an instant. Suddenly, they didn't know what to say. They were so shocked that they couldn't speak. 2 early celestial venerables of the Xiaoyao sect had died at the hands of an early golden venerable. They thought it was crazy. With a flash of lightning, Zhuowen arrived before Jianan, Jiasha, and Xian Xing at the edge of the plaza. He transmitted his voice to the 3 of them. "The 3 of you should leave first. Staying here won't do you any good." "Brother Zhua, we're not leaving," said Gatha stubbornly. "Brother Zhua, we can't let you face the Xiaoyao sect alone. Didn't you say that if you want to be strong, you have to be fearless? If you want to become an expert, then you must have a fearless heart. If we shrink back under your protection, then how could we possibly become experts?" Jianan clenched his fists tightly as he spoke. Zhuowen looked at Jianan in surprise. He nodded and said, "Since it's that way, you can stay here. You can deal with the disciples of the Xiaoyao sect. I'll take care of the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect and the other 3 elders." When Zhuowen said that, the 3 elders of the Xiaoyao sect looked glum. This little bastard was too arrogant. He dared say that in front of them. He didn't know what was good for him. "Brother Zhua, since you're not leaving, you can't forget about me." At the same time, A clear voice came from the crowd in the square. Then, a demonic man in a black robe landed beside Zhuowen. Brother Emo, so you're here too. Jia Nan, Jia Sha and Xian Xing revealed an excited expression in their eyes when they saw this demonic man. Clearly, they did not expect that Emo Lingtian would actually come and rescue them. Brother Emo cares about you guys a lot. He came to West Trace City 3 days earlier than me, Zhuowen said with a smile. Emo Lingtian felt a little embarrassed when he saw Zhuowen's teasing smile. On the other hand, Jia Nan and the other two revealed a touched expression in their eyes as a warm current flowed through their hearts. Zhuowen and Emo Lingtian really treated them as friends and were willing to take the risk to come to West Slope City for them to help them resolve their problems and share their hardships. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's solve the problem in front of us first. Emo Lingtian waved his hand and stared at the people from the unfettered sect. There were a lot of disciples from the unfettered sect in the unfettered square. There were almost 100 of them, and they were all elites of the unfettered sect. Most of them were supremes, and some were even golden exalts. This was a strong force. Although Emo Lingtian was strong, Jia Nan and Gatha's armor souls were not ordinary. It was difficult for them to face such a force. 5 ants want to fight against the unfettered sect? You're courting death. The unfettered sect master's eyes were cold. He turned to the 2 rows of disciples behind him and said, "Kill them all. Don't leave a single one alive." The 100 disciples of the unfettered sect cupped their hands and shouted in unison. Then, they formed a mysterious formation and surrounded Zhuowen and the others. They pointed their swords at Zhuowen and the others. "As for you, get the hell out here. I'll kill you myself." When the disciples of the unfettered sect surrounded Zhuowen, the unfettered sect master appeared above them and pointed at Zhuowen. Zhuowen had killed 2 celestial exalts in front of him. It was a humiliation for the unfettered sect. Besides, he was able to kill early celestial exalts, which meant that he was very strong. The disciples of the unfettered sect couldn't fight against him. That was why the unfettered sect master had asked Zhuowen to deal with him. "Brother Emo, the 4 of you should be careful. Also, Kanan and Jasha, make good use of your armor souls. That way, you will have unexpected gains," said Zhuowen to the 4 of them. Then, he jumped in front of the unfettered sect master. He knew that if he killed the unfettered sect master, the unfettered sect would collapse. "You're quite talented. You managed to kill Black Fist and Blue Ocean from the Xiaoyao sect. It seems like you're quite a famous genius in the Divine College. But so, what if you're a monstrous genius in Jiaxin University? Don't even think about leaving after killing my disciples. You'll stay here forever." Chapter 1054. The strength of the Buddha and the demon. The atmosphere of the entire Xiaoyao Square was extremely heavy, even a little oppressive. Close to 100 disciples of the Xiaoyao sect surrounded Jia Nan, Emo Lingtian, and the other 2. Their sharp swords were all pointed at the 4 of them without exception. In this pitch-black night, it was extremely eye-catching. The patriarch of the Carefree sect and the other 3 elders were staring coldly at Tun, who had red hair and red eyes and was holding a blood spear. The 2 of them were facing each other in the air. The atmosphere was oppressive. The crowd held their breaths as they watched the scene. Zhuowen and Emo Lingtian were only 5 people, but they were facing nearly 100 elite disciples of the Carefree sect. The young man with the blood spear was arrogant enough to face the patriarch of the Carefree sect and the other 3 elders at the same time. A mere martial artist in the initial stage of the Golden Venerate realm actually intended to face 4 heavenly venerates at the same time, including a peak heavenly venerate supreme master. In the eyes of many, this was an act of seeking death. However, the crowd didn't think so. The young man with red hair and red eyes was much stronger than they had expected. The 2 early celestial venerables of the Carefree sect, He Quan and Lan Hai, had been killed in front of the crowd. The crowd didn't dare to underestimate the young man. Even so, they still thought that he was going to face 4 celestial venerables at the same time. There was even a peak celestial venerable cultivator among them. Such a lineup was too arrogant. The chances of him winning weren't high. "You're quite brave. You actually dare to face the four of us?" The patriarch of the carefree sect stared at Zhuan with a murderous look in his eyes. The most talented disciple of the carefree sect, Bai Yixue, and the celestial venerable elder of the carefree sect had been killed by him. The patriarch of the carefree sect hated Zhuan so much that he couldn't wait to kill him. Why not? Your unfettered sect's Empyrean martial artists don't seem to be much either, Zhuan said indifferently. The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect and his disciples weren't like the Jiaxin University. They didn't have a cultivation tower that could temper their meridians. The disciples of the Xiaoyao sect were much weaker than the Jiaxin University. Take Black Fist and Lan Hai, who Zhuan had just killed, for example. Although they were both at the early stage of the heavenly venerable realm like Lu Xiang, there was still a huge gap between them and Lu Xiang. With Zhuowen's strength, he did not need to enter the demonized state to kill Black Fist and Blue Ocean. However, doing so would waste a lot of time. Back then, the situation had been critical. Zhuan had needed to end the battle quickly. Hence, he had used the demonized state. As expected, when Zhuan said that, the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect and the three elders pulled a long face. This young man was really fearless. He dared talk like that in front of the four celestial Zun masters. He wanted to die. Since you want to die, I'll help you. Let's attack together and kill him, said the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect to the three old men behind him. He stomped on the ground and purple lightning emerged from his hands. His entire body was enveloped by the purple lightning. The purple lightning exploded and the purple lightning descended. The three old men behind the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect looked furious, especially the one whose right arm had been destroyed by Zhuan. His eyes were filled with murder. "Die!" shouted the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect furiously. In a flash, the four cultivators moved toward Zhuowen and surrounded him. At the same time, four terrifying energies emerged from the four cultivators' hands. Their pure qi was like a blue whale spitting out water. It looked like fireworks in the sky. Zhuowen's eyes were bloodshot. He looked calm and indifferent. When the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect and the other four cultivators attacked him, Zhuowen moved. He spun on his feet and waved his blood spear in his right hand. Blood qi gushed out and formed a terrifying vortex. He was as immovable as a mountain, but he moved as fast as lightning. The vortex was like a perfect defense. Even though the four old men's attacks were terrifying, when they entered the vortex, it was as if they had entered a swamp. Interesting. We don't need to be merciful. Let's join hands and kill him. When the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect saw that the four old men's attacks had been destroyed by the vortex, his face stiffened. However, he looked even more furious. The purple lightning in his hands was becoming more and more intense. It was as if lightning had descended from the sky. It was terrifying. The other three elders nodded as the aura on their bodies rose to the extreme. Their palms spat out with the power of a rainbow piercing through the sun. The terrifying strength qi formed a spiral shape as it suddenly swept out and heavily smashed onto the blood-colored vortex. Lightning punishment. The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect didn't want to be outdone. When the purple lightning in his hands reached the maximum, he raised his hands and a ball of lightning appeared. It was as big as a palm and it moved towards the sky. After that, dark clouds started to condense in the sky. Purple lightning snakes appeared in the clouds. It looked terrifying. Boom boom. The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect jumped up and raised his right hand. The dark clouds started rolling and the purple lightning condensed into 100 zhonglong purple python. The purple python roared furiously and swooped down towards the blood-colored whirlpool below. After which, it plunged headfirst into the whirlpool. Instantly, terrifying purple lightning filled the air. After which, the originally indestructible blood-colored whirlpool started to tremble violently. Kacha! The sound of something shattering rang out. The purple python was too terrifying. With a casual swing of its tail, it was able to produce tens of thousands of bolts of purple lightning. Although the blood-red vortex's defense was tough, it still couldn't withstand the attack of the purple python. Boom! When the cracks spread all over the blood-red whirlpool, it finally collapsed. Then, a figure with blood-red hair and eyes flew out of the shattered blood-red whirlpool. Die! shouted the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect furiously. The purple python moved towards the silhouette with red hair. Zhuan looked surprised. He hadn't thought that the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect would be so strong. He had broken through the vortex's defense. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect raised his blood spear and condensed a terrifying amount of blood qi. It turned into a 10-zhang-long blood spear. That blood spear looked like a blood bridge. Boom boom boom. Just as the blood-red spear shadow appeared, the purple python had already arrived. It opened its bloody mouth that was filled with purple lightning, and countless purple lightning swallowed and spat out. Its power was enormous and terrifying. The blood-red spear shadow actually froze in midair under the might of the purple lightning python and then continuously retreated. Zhuowen's face changed. He jumped up and landed on the blood spear. His right hand was filled with blood qi and he punched the spear. Under Zhuowen's palm strike, the blood-colored spear shadow, which had been retreating repeatedly, stopped its retreat. "It's useless," shouted the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect furiously. He also landed on the purple python and put his hands on the python's head. Purple lightning kept pouring into the python's body. He wanted to make the purple python go berserk. A mournful roar resounded. The purple lightning on the huge purple python's body was extremely frightening. Its huge snake body continuously twisted and turned, emitting an extremely frightening and huge force. Boom boom boom. Zhuan was standing in the air with his right hand on the blood spear. He could feel that the python was going berserk. He couldn't help but step back. His face looked glum. "How dare you provoke the Xiao Yao sect? I think you don't know how to write the word death." A chilling voice rang out from behind Zhuowen, who was retreating. Soon after, Zhuowen could clearly hear the terrifying sound of something breaking through the air. Clearly, someone was planning to launch a sneak attack. Nirvana of the Great Sun. At that moment, Zhuowen, who was in a demonic state, used the nirvana of the Great Sun. In a flash, he had 4 heads and 8 arms. Suddenly, the golden Buddha's light and the blood-red demon's qi started fusing together. Surprisingly, a strange power was created. A skinny palm suddenly surged over and ruthlessly imprinted itself on Zhuowen's back. Then, Zhuowen saw a hideous grin on his face. It was actually the purple-robed elder whose right hand had been crippled by him. The old man in the purple robe had a hideous smile on his face. He had been preparing for that attack for a long time. He had been waiting for the moment when Zhuan was defenseless. Therefore, he was extremely proud of himself, because he determined that Zhuowen would definitely suffer an extremely serious injury after receiving his palm strike. At that time, how would this kid be able to resist their sect master? However, the moment the purple-robed old man's right hand landed on Zhuowen's back, his expression changed. This was because he sensed an extremely violent energy from Zhuowen. Moreover, the energy gave him a feeling that he could not resist it. What kind of energy is this? The old man in the purple robe quickly noticed that the Buddha's light and the demon's qi on Zhuowen's body emitted a strange energy. This energy was very unstable and violent. It seemed like it could explode at any time. Moreover, this energy was like a maggot in one's bones. It followed the old man's palm and entered his body. What was even more strange was that the moment this energy entered his meridians, it violently exploded. In an instant, the meridians in his left arm exploded under this strange energy. What kind of energy is this? Why is it so strange? The purple-clothed old man miserably howled. He wanted to withdraw his left arm that was imprinted on Zhuowen's back. Unfortunately, Zhuowen's eyes were sharp and his hands were quick. He grabbed the left arm that the old man was about to withdraw. "After the sneak attack, you plan to run?" Zhuowen's cold voice rang out. Then, the terrifying Buddha's demonic energy blasted into the old man's body. Suddenly, the Buddha's demonic energy began to explode in the old man's meridians. Puchi. In just an instant, the old man in the purple robe began to bleed from his 7 orifices. His body exploded into a bloody mist. His eyes were wide open and he died with a grievance. After killing the old man in the purple robe, Yun let out a muffled groan. He quickly dispelled the nirvana of the Great Sun. His eyes revealed a trace of horror. Chapter 1055. Fearless of course, Zhuowen also discovered that when the Buddhist energy and the demonic energy merged together, the strange energy produced not only had the effect of destroying the enemy's meridians, but it could also backfire on the user's meridians. Fortunately, Zhuowen had quickly dispelled the nirvana of the Great Sun. Additionally, his meridians had become abnormally strong after being tempered by the cultivation tower and meridian opening pill. Thus, Zhuowen did not suffer too much damage. However, Zhuowen was extremely fearful of this strange fusion of Buddha and devil. He was very clear that if he did not remove the Great Sun nirvana state in time, the consequences would be unimaginable. His meridians would definitely be severely damaged. How dare you kill Elder Ziyan? The death of the elder in purple clothes infuriated the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. He was standing on the head of the purple python. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect shouted furiously. The purple python under his feet became even more terrifying. In a flash, purple lightning filled the sky and broke through the blood spear in Zhuowen's hand. Boom! In just an instant, the bloody spear that was over 100 feet long completely shattered under the attack of the purple lightning. It turned into a bloody powder that dissipated in the air. The blood spear was broken and the purple lightning filled the air. It was like maggots in a corpse. It extended towards Zhuowen. It wanted to kill Zhuowen completely. Zhuowen narrowed his eyes and stepped back. However, the purple lightning was too fast. In a flash, it caught up with Zhuowen. There was a rumbling sound and it seemed like the purple lightning was going to corrode Zhuowen's entire body. Mo Sha! Zhuowen stomped his foot when he saw how swift the purple lightning was. Countless strands of blood qi suffused the air as the blood spear in his hands split into 10. They formed a blood-colored fence in front of him with the intention of blocking the terrifying purple lightning. Boom boom boom. The purple lightning arrived before the blood-colored fence in an instant. Following that, an extremely terrifying muffled thunder-like sound rang out. Zhuowen frowned slightly. The might of the purple lightning had exceeded his expectations. The blood-colored fence in front of him actually showed signs of collapsing. Retreat! Zhuowen shouted indifferently. His blood-red hair fluttered as he suddenly flew backwards. The moment he retreated, the blood-red fence was completely annihilated by the purple lightning. As for Zhuowen, he had already retreated dozens of steps away. His gaze was indifferent as he stared at the destroyed blood-colored fence. You run away faster than a mouse. Purple lightning flashed and the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect arrived in front of the blood-red fence. He looked at Zhuowen coldly. Everyone in the square was surprised when they saw this scene. Said the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect indifferently to the old man in the white robe. Don't worry, it's just 4 ants. I won't drag this out for too long. I'll definitely end this quickly. The white-robed old man chuckled. With a stomp of his foot, he instantly rushed toward Mo Lingtian below. However, the moment the old man rushed out, a blood shadow also rushed out at the same time and blocked in front of the white-robed old man. I'm your opponent. Why are you running? Zhuowen raised his eyes slightly and looked directly at the white-robed old man before him. He grinned, revealing a row of cold white teeth, causing the white-robed old man's heart to tremble and his expression to stiffen. He had seen with his own eyes that the other 3 celestial Zun elders of the Carefree sect had been killed by this young man. He knew that he was as strong as the 3 celestial Zun elders who had been killed. Therefore, he was certain that he would die if he fought against this young man. The old man in the white robe shouted in a low voice. He did not have the courage to face Zhuowen at all. He took a step forward and flew backward. His face was filled with fear. Those are the elders of the Xiao Yao sect? They're as timid as a mouse. Zhuowen didn't chase after the old man in white clothes because the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect was standing behind the old man in white clothes. He was staring at Zhuowen. Zhuowen's words were loud and clear, and the entire Carefree square heard him clearly. Many people looked at the white-robed old man, who was covering his head and running away like a rat, and shot him a strange look. A dignified early-stage heavenly venerable martial artist was actually so timid in front of an early-stage golden venerable martial artist. Anyone who saw this would find it very strange and strange. However, No one was surprised by the white-robed old man's actions because they had seen Zhuo Wen's combat strength with their own eyes. Zhuo Wen could easily kill early-stage heavenly venerables. It would be strange if the white-robed old man was not afraid. "Xiaoyao, old dog. You three can't even protect yourselves, why would you care about other people?" said Zhuo Wen arrogantly, looking at the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect and the two elders next to him. "Very good. You were defeated by my attacks and now you're saying that we can't even protect ourselves. I don't know where you get your confidence from," said the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect coldly. Then, he said something to the two elders next to him. He jumped on the ground and the purple python moved toward Zhuo Wen again. The two elders didn't want to be outdone either. They followed the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect, one on his left and one on his right. They were waiting for an opportunity to attack. "It seems like I need to add fuel to the fire of the bedevilment." Zhuo Wen's eyes were cold. With a flick of his finger, he took out the bronze coffin and opened it by a third. Dense and terrifying blood-red energy surged out of the bronze coffin and enveloped Zhuo Wen. "Zhuo, you little bastard! How dare you absorb my energy again?" When the bronze coffin was opened to absorb the blood demon's power, a shrill scream was heard. It was the voice of the blood demon sealed in the coffin. Zhuo Wen didn't care about the blood demon. He just kept absorbing the blood demon's energy. When the blood-red energy reached the limit of the bedevilment state, Zhuo Wen raised his head to the sky and shouted. A wave of blood-red qi spread out like a tsunami. Boom boom boom. The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect and the two elders who were riding the purple python also sensed Zhuo Wen's terrifying strength. After that, the three of them sensed a thick blood qi attack them. That qi was terrifying. Boom boom boom. The three of them couldn't help but retreat. Even the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect, who was riding the purple python, was pushed back a few steps. The purple python was surrounded by purple lightning, and its purple eyes were twinkling with fear. How come this guy's strength increased again? And it increased so much. The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect was astonished. At that moment, Zhuo Wen gave him much more pressure than before. Die! At this moment, countless surging strands of bloody qi permeated Zhuo Wen's surroundings. His blood-red hair fluttered in the air like layers upon layers of waves. Zhuo Wen's blood-red eyes became even deeper. At this moment, Zhuo Wen was like a demon god of slaughter that had walked out from the depths of hell. His killing intent was monstrous, and blood clouds filled the sky. Boom! The instant Zhuo Wen spat out the word kill, he had already taken a step forward with his right foot. The power contained in this step was so great that even the surrounding space shook violently. Blood qi erupted, and a sea of blood began to fill the surroundings. At that moment, Zhuo Wen shot out like a cannonball. His entire body turned into a beam of blood and moved towards the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect. So what if you've become stronger? You're just at the initial level of the Golden Zune layer. You can't defeat me. Chapter 1056. Carefree Sword Boom. Zhuo Wen had turned into a beam of blood-red light. A terrifying blood-red energy filled the air and turned into a blood-red whirlpool. In the end, the whirlpool bombarded the purple lightning sea around the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect. Bang bang bang. Sounds of intense collisions rang out continuously. Then, the blood-red energy and the purple lightning continued to entangle in the void. It was as though two ancient beasts were engaged in a fierce battle. Everyone in the square was somewhat shocked as they watched this scene. Such an intense collision was not something that they could handle. Just the aftermath of the collision between the bloody light and the lightning caused everyone to feel as if the heavens were crushing down on them. A trace of reverence involuntarily rose in their hearts. This damned little bastard, how did his strength increase so much? The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect was furious. He hadn't thought that Zhuo Wen would become so strong after absorbing the blood demon's strength. Now, the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect could sense that Zhuo Wen was a threat to him. At this moment, Zhuo Wen was in the middle of the purple lightning. Countless blood qi surged around him, resisting the powerful purple lightning that was constantly spreading around him. At the same time, he took a step forward. His blood qi was like the best defense, impenetrable by tens of thousands of lightning. Inside the purple lightning, Zhuowen broke through the sea of purple lightning and passed by the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. Leader of the Xiao Yao sect. I'll be the last to deal with you. You still have a little time to live, said Zhuowen indifferently. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect was surprised at first, but then he reacted and shouted, "Oh no, elders!" As expected, when the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect turned around, he saw that Zhuowen was already flying towards the two celestial Zun elders behind him. "You two, hurry up and run," shouted the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. He sounded worried. Zhuowen was even stronger than before. Back then, Zhuowen was already strong enough to kill cultivators of the initial celestial Zun layer. Now, he was even stronger. The moment the Xiao Yao sect shouted, the two Zhonglai realized that something was wrong. When they saw Zhuowen rushing towards them, they panicked. "Run!" The white-robed old man from earlier let out a furious roar and directly rushed to the back, fleeing without a trace. The other old man's reaction was a little slower, but it was this momentary distraction that allowed Zhuowen to catch up to him. "Die!" Zhuowen fiercely swung his bloody spear. Immediately, a terrifying blood qi converged. Numerous blood-colored spear shadows completely enveloped the old man, who was half a beat slower. Ah! A horrible shriek spread in the air. The old man was covered by the blood-red spear shadows and turned into a bloody mist. "That son of a bitch!" The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect pulled a long face. He hadn't thought that another celestial Zun elder of the Xiao Yao sect would die. Out of the 5 celestial Zun elders, only the old man in white was left. The other 4 had all been killed by Zhuan. "I want you to die," shouted the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect furiously. The purple lightning around his body became even more violent as it moved towards Zhuan. It formed a gigantic lightning bridge in the sky. Zhuowen's blood-red eyes were filled with indifference. He pushed out with his right hand and blood-red energy immediately surged out, forming a circular blood-red barrier in front of him. Boom! Purple lightning filled the air and smashed onto the circular blood-colored barrier. However, it only caused the blood-colored barrier to shake a little before it did not budge at all. At the same time, Zhuowen spread his wings like a giant rock and instantly shot out in pursuit of the rapidly fleeing white-robed old man. With 3 pairs of lightning wings and the strength of the blood demon, Zhuowen was unbelievably fast. He caught up with the old man in white in the blink of an eye. "You can't escape," said Zhuowen coldly. Then he raised his right hand and punched the old man with a terrifying strength. The white-robed old man only felt a cold wind blowing behind his back. He discovered that Zhuowen had unknowingly appeared behind him. Zhuowen's right hand was raised high. His palm contained a continuously changing blood ball. Although the blood ball was small, the power contained within it caused the white-robed old man to faintly feel apprehensive. "Stop him!" The white-robed elder's eyes flashed with a cold light. He knew that it was time for him to put his life on the line. He had to give it his all. Then, his right hand formed a palm. White light burst out from his palm as he slammed it toward Zhuowen. Boom boom. When the 2 palms collided, the white light on the white-robed old man's right palm was like a candle in the wind, instantly extinguishing. Then, the demonic blood ball in Zhuowen's palm began to expand, and a terrifying blood-colored energy surged out and drilled into the white-robed old man's body. Ah! With a blood-curdling scream, the white-robed old man's right arm was corroded by the blood-colored energy and completely exploded into fine powder. Zhuowen was not going to let the white-robed old man off. His left palm, which had been accumulating power, went straight for the white-robed old man's chest. Poochie! His left palm landed heavily on the white-robed old man's chest, and a demonic blood-red color exploded. The white-robed old man's face revealed an expression of extreme pain. He was bleeding from his 7 orifices, and his face was deathly pale. "Die!" Zhuowen's expression did not change. Yuan power once again spat out from his left palm. The white-robed elder did not even have the chance to groan before he exploded into a bloody mist. The Yuanying hidden in his dantian was also completely annihilated by this terrifying palm force. It simply did not have any chance to escape. So far, 5 elders of the Xiaoyao sect had been killed by Zhuo Wen alone. When the white-robed old man exploded into a bloody mist, many people below the square were stunned. Although Zhuo Wen's battle strength was terrifying from the very beginning and everyone had a very high evaluation of him, Zhuo Wen's battle strength was extremely terrifying. But this time, Zhuo Wen had killed 3 celestial Zun elders in front of the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect. In other words, even the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect couldn't stop Zhuo Wen from killing the celestial Zun elders. Did that mean that Zhuo Wen was as strong as the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect? The sect leader of the Xiaoyao sect was glaring furiously, his hair standing on end. The young sect leader was dead, Bai Yixue was dead, and now the 5 celestial venerable elders were dead as well. Even if the patriarch of the carefree sect could kill Zhuo Wen, the carefree sect would suffer a great loss. They would never be as glorious as they used to be. All of this was caused by the young man with red hair and red eyes. Zhuo Wen looked calm when he saw the patriarch of the carefree sect's furious expression. He pointed his spear at the patriarch of the carefree sect and said indifferently, "Now it's your turn, old dog. I'll make sure you die a horrible death." The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect raised his head to the sky and shouted furiously. Then he jumped forwards. He didn't jump toward Zhuo Wen, he jumped towards the gigantic statue in front of the Xiaoyao square. That statue was the image of the first patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect. The Xiaoyao sect had built it to commemorate the first patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect who had founded the prosperous West Path city and the powerful Xiaoyao sect. What is the patriarch of the carefree sect doing? Why is he stepping on the statue of the first patriarch of the carefree sect? The people in the square didn't understand why the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect was doing that. They didn't know what he was trying to do. Zhuo Wen was also staring at the patriarch of the carefree sect. He had a bad feeling. Stop him. No matter what the patriarch of the carefree sect wanted to do, Zhuo Wen didn't want to let him live. The first patriarch of the unfettered sect founded West Path City and the unfettered sect. He was also a powerful great emperor. Do you really think that's all the unfettered sect has? You killed the young patriarch of the carefree sect, the first disciple of the carefree sect, Bai Yixue, and the 5 elders of the carefree sect. You must receive the harshest punishment, said the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect. He stretched out his right hand and a strange hand seal appeared. Then he punched the head of the statue. Boom! The huge stone statue began to tremble violently, and terrifying cracks began to appear on its surface. The cracks grew larger and larger, and finally, the entire stone statue collapsed and shattered. A ray of white light, like a scorching sun, burst out from the stone statue, illuminating the pitch-black carefree square as if it was daytime. A ring-shaped wave of air spread out from the stone statue. Under the impact of this wave of air, Zhuo Wen was blown away before he could reach the stone statue. His feet took several steps in the air before he barely managed to stabilize his body. What a terrifying power! What's inside the statue? Zhuo Wen's gaze became extremely solemn. The force of impact emanating from the stone statue was terrifying. It actually gave him a feeling of being unable to resist. Everybody in the square was pushed back a few hundred meters before they could stabilize themselves. They looked at the broken statue and the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect who was standing on top of the statue's head with fear in their eyes. The eyes of the unfettered sect's disciples, who were originally entangled with Mo Lingtian, Jianan and the other 2, were filled with fanaticism. They immediately retreated into the distance and no longer paid any attention to Mo Lingtian, Jianan and the other 2. Ancestral weapon. The patriarch is about to use his ancestral weapon. The disciples of the carefree sect who had retreated knelt down on one knee. They looked at the crumbling statue with excited eyes and murmured to themselves. On the other hand, Mo Lingtian, Jianan, and the other 2 were baffled. When they saw the unfettered sect's disciple retreat, they naturally followed suit. What's going on? What does the patriarch of the carefree sect want to do? Jianan looked at the statue in front of her with worry. According to the disciples of the carefree sect, the patriarch of the carefree sect is going to use his ancestral weapon. But I don't know what this ancestral weapon is. Mo Lingtian frowned. He was also confused. Boom! Chapter 1057. Two emperor weapons. When the white longsword appeared in front of the crowd, a majestic force gushed out like a stormy sea. The immense pressure and peerless power caused the surrounding space to become extremely unstable. The surface of the white longsword shone with a divine light. Waves of milky white halos rotated on the surface of the sword. It was like the halos contained in the sun. It was dazzling and could not be looked at directly. Under the milky white halos, there was a solemn and powerful aura. It was like a high and mighty emperor. That's the Xiaoyao sword? It's actually the Xiaoyao sword that belonged to the first sect master of the Xiaoyao sect? Some of the sharp-eyed people in the square immediately recognized the white longsword in the palm of the Xiaoyao sect's sect master. The first sect master of the Xiaoyao sect was a legendary figure in West Path City. There were countless rumors about his sword, the Xiaoyao sword. It was said that when West Path City was first built, there were 3 Emperor Realm cultivators who coveted this place. They joined forces to kill the first patriarch of the Carefree sect. However, the first patriarch of the Carefree sect held the Carefree sword in his hand and fought against the 3 Emperor Realm cultivators alone. In the end, the 3 Emperor Realm cultivators were defeated and fled in panic. Although it had been a long time, the Xiaoyao sword was still very famous in West Path City. Even now, many people still talked about the Xiaoyao sword. However, since the first sect master of the Xiaoyao sect left after establishing the Xiaoyao sect, the Xiaoyao sword had completely disappeared from everyone's sight. All the cultivators in West Path City thought that the unfettered sword had been taken away by the first patriarch of the unfettered sect. They had never thought that it would be left in the unfettered sect. Moreover, the people of the unfettered sect had hidden the unfettered sword in the statue of the first patriarch. Emperor weapon? Zhuan also heard the discussion below. He stared at the white longsword in the hand of the Xiaoyao sect's sect master. The longsword gave him a faint sense of danger. Zhuan had felt this feeling from Emperor Qing's peach blossom origin painting and murderous abstinence blade. Now, he felt a familiar sense of danger from the Xiaoyao sword. Obviously, the Xiaoyao sword was an emperor weapon. After all, it was the sword of the first sect master of the Xiaoyao sect. The sword of an emperor realm cultivator naturally had to be an emperor weapon. Not good. It's a monarch weapon. The Xiaoyao sect has a monarch weapon? Mo Lingtian, who was standing at the edge of the square, couldn't help but shriek. What should we do? Although Brother Zhua is very strong, he's at most on par with the Xiaoyao sect's sect master. Now that the Xiaoyao sect's sect master has an emperor weapon, Brother Zhua doesn't have such a powerful weapon. The two of them are not on equal footing, Jianan said anxiously. Gatha and Xian Xing were also worried. Originally, when Zhuan killed the 5 elders of the Xiaoyao sect, the 4 of them had felt the dawn of victory. Now that the Xiaoyao sword had appeared, their hearts sank to the bottom. This young man is already very extraordinary. He can actually force the Xiaoyao sect's sect master to this extent. I'm afraid that even if he dies under the Xiaoyao sword, he will die in peace. Not only did he kill the first disciple of the Xiaoyao sect, Bai Yixue, but he also killed the 5 elders of the Xiaoyao sect. Even if he dies at the hands of the Xiaoyao sect's sect master, I'm afraid his name will spread throughout the entire West Path City. Even the entire Excellent Spirit Island will spread his name. When the Xiaoyao sword appeared, everyone in the Xiaoyao square involuntarily looked at the red-haired, red-eyed young man standing on the other side of the void. Everyone's eyes were filled with a trace of pity. The battle strength that Zhuowen had displayed had truly shocked everyone in the square. They were all able to predict that if Zhuowen did not die, with the talent and strength that he had displayed, his future would be limitless. However, he was about to die under the unfettered sword. No one even thought that Zhuowen was lucky, because a peak heavenly master with an emperor weapon could unleash a terrifying battle prowess. Perhaps he still wasn't a match for a martial emperor, but at least he already had a part of the martial emperor's power. Below the martial emperor realm, all are ants. This was a popular saying in the heavenly armor continent, which perfectly explained the power and terror of a martial emperor. No matter how monstrous one's talent was or how powerful one's strength was, in front of a martial emperor, one was a complete ant. Even though the Xiaoyao sect master couldn't fully unleash the martial emperor's power with the Xiaoyao sword, even a part of its power was extremely terrifying. Even a peak heavenly master would perish in the hands of the Xiaoyao sect master. At that moment, the Xiaoyao sect master looked high-spirited and high-spirited. His hair was fluttering in the wind, making him look like a celestial being. The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect noticed that everybody was looking at him with different expressions. Some were surprised, some were jealous, some were self-abased, some were in awe. The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect was satisfied with all the negative emotions. He smiled faintly. At that moment, he was high up in the air, enjoying the attention of the crowd. The Xiaoyao sect master was very satisfied. Then, he looked past the crowd and landed on the young man who had injured the unfettered sect. He wanted to see all kinds of negative emotions in the young man's eyes. However, when the Xiaoyao sect master looked at Zhuan, his face stiffened, because he didn't see the slightest trace of unusual emotion in Zhuo Wen's eyes. There was only that indifferent expression from the beginning to the end, as if there was nothing in the world that could make this pair of indifferent eyes reveal any other unusual splendor. Zhuan looked cold and indifferent. He was as calm as water. You're truly able to keep your composure. You're actually able to pretend to be so calm before the might of an emperor weapon. However, you can continue to pretend as much as you can now. Let's see if you can still pretend to be so calm when this old man kills you later," said the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect mockingly. He couldn't help but laugh at Zhuan. "Are you done talking? If you're done, come here and die," said Zhuan indifferently, ignoring the Xiaoyao sect master's mockery. The Xiaoyao sect master's face stiffened again. Then, his face turned red and he shouted furiously, "You've got balls. We're already at this stage and you still dare to provoke me? Good. Today, I'll make you wish you were dead. You'll regret living in this world." Then, the Xiaoyao sect master stomped on the ground and shot toward Zhuan like a cannonball. The Xiaoyao sword in his hand was dazzling. At that moment, the Xiaoyao sect master looked like he was holding the sun. He's really tired of living. The Xiaoyao sect master has a great imperial weapon like the Xiaoyao sword and he dares to provoke him. He's really reckless. Everybody was astonished. Zhuo Wen's behavior was beyond their expectations. Of course, after being astonished for a while, they started to gloat. That young man had dared to provoke the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect. That was a stupid thing to do. "Brother Mo, what should we do now? The Xiaoyao sect master with the Xiaoyao sword is too strong. Brother Zhuo is in danger." Jianan leaped up anxiously, and he actually intended to flash toward Zhuo Wen. However, Mo Lingtian stopped him, and Mo Lingtian said with a solemn expression, "You're mad. With your cultivation level, you're going to die. Then are we just going to sit here and wait for our deaths and watch as big brother Zhuo is killed?" Kanan roared out. "Jianan, don't worry. Can't you see that brother Zhuo looks calm? From what I can see, brother Zhuo, you must have some trump cards that you don't fear the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so calm," said Mo Lingtian. Jianan was stunned, and then he calmed down. Mo Lingtian's analysis was correct. Zhuo Wen was too calm right now, calm to the point of being terrifying. Clearly, Zhuo Wen might have some sort of powerful trump card up his sleeve. Besides, Jianan's cultivation level was low. If he went up, he would only be a burden to Zhu. Let's just wait and see. If brother Zhuo can't defeat him, we'll all die together. Mo Lingtian slowly raised his head at this moment, and his gaze focused on Zhuo Wen's tall and straight back as he muttered in a low voice. Jianan, Gatha and Xian Xing nodded. They were also looking at Zhuo Wen's back. They were ready to die. The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect arrived in front of Zhuo Wen. His eyes were filled with dazzling lights. He smiled cruelly and slowly raised his right hand. His Xiaoyao sword was shining brighter and brighter as if it was going to disperse all the darkness in the sky. The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect smiled like a blooming chrysanthemum. He knew that the young man with red hair was going to die under that sword. He was definitely going to die. That's what you get for provoking the Xiaoyao sect. Now, you're going to pay with your life. said the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. He was laughing like a maniac. Do you think you can kill me with just an emperor weapon? At this moment, Zhuowen also raised his head. His blood-red eyes were still as cold as a demon's as he slowly spoke in an indifferent voice. You're really stubborn. You've already reached this point, yet you still think that I can't kill you? You're delusional, said the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect, smiling coldly. He raised his Xiao Yao sword above his head and a milky white light appeared. It looked like the sun was about to explode, and lava was pouring out of the sword. Of course you can't kill me because you're not the only one who has a great imperial weapon. I have one too. As he spoke, a torrential killing intent surged out of Zhuo Jingwen's body. Soon after, a blood-red blade slashed through the air. A torrential pressure came crashing down, as if mountains were descending from the sky. Chapter 1058. The Patriarch's Godly Consciousness Clang. The sound of metal colliding resounded. Shortly after, the blood-red Buddhist commandment blade hit the carefree sword, creating a terrifying energy vortex. Soon after, the energy ripples spread out. The entire carefree square, and even the mountain range where the carefree sect was located, shook violently. Boom boom boom. Everyone on the Liberty Square staggered under this violent tremor. Some of the weaker warriors even fell to the ground, their limbs supporting them as they trembled. That collision was terrifying. Everybody was terrified. The Xiao Yao sect was trembling because of the shockwaves. 4 Zun cultivators were only capable of using that kind of power. Boom boom boom. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect was astonished. He was pushed back a few steps. His right hand was shaking violently and his thumb was numb. Boom. When the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect stepped back, the people who had just regained their balance noticed him. Immediately after, the crowd burst into an uproar. The uproar was getting louder and louder. It was like a tsunami spreading through the entire square. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect was pushed back? How is that possible? He's holding the Xiao Yao sword. Everybody was staring at the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. They were astonished. If the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect hadn't been holding the Xiao Yao sword, nobody would have been surprised. However, he was holding the Xiao Yao sword and was retreating. Everybody was astonished. An emperor weapon already possessed a portion of the power of an emperor realm expert. Even if the wielder's strength was not at the emperor realm, he could still use a portion of the emperor realm expert's power by relying on the emperor might in the emperor realm. However, even a portion of the power was not something 4 venerables could withstand. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect had the Xiao Yao sword. He was much stronger than an ordinary celestial master. He could even fight against a great emperor of the first layer. However, he had been pushed back by Zhuan. He hadn't been pushed back by 1 step, he had been pushed back a few steps. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Everybody looked at the young man with blood-red hair who was standing in front of the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. The young man looked as cold as a demon. Above his head, there was a blood-red Buddhist commandment blade. That blade had blocked the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect's Xiao Yao sword and forced the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect to retreat. Is that a great emperor's weapon too? Everyone's eyes were fixed on the blood-red Buddhist commandment blade. The majestic aura emitted by the blade made everyone tremble with fear. It was not any weaker than the carefree sword. Some of the sharper ones even discovered that the aura of the blade was even more terrifying than the carefree sword. Nobody would have thought that the young man of the golden Zun Qi cultivator would have a great emperor's weapon. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect had a great imperial weapon, the Xiao Yao sword, but nobody was surprised. After all, the Xiao Yao sect had existed for hundreds of years. However, the young man with blood-red hair was alone and had a great imperial weapon, which was incredible. Brother Zhuo, you have a great emperor's weapon too? Jia Nan was stunned. He stared fixedly at the Buddhist monk's blade on Zhuo Wen's body as his eyes were filled with admiration and surprise. Not only Jia Nan, but Emo Ling Tian, Gatha and Xian Xing were also astonished. When they saw how calm Zhuowen was, they knew that Zhuowen had a trump card. However, when Zhuowen revealed his trump card, the 3 of them never expected that it would give them such a huge shock. It was actually a terrifyingly powerful emperor weapon. Furthermore, the power of this emperor weapon was actually so terrifying. Brother Joie, how many more secrets are you hiding? A bitter smile appeared on Emo Lingtian's lips. He realized that he really could not see through Zhuowen anymore. The young man with blood-red hair and blood-red eyes who stood proudly in the air was surrounded by layers of mist. Emo Lingtian had thought that he had seen through Zhuowen after removing a few layers of mist, but he realized that he was very wrong. The mist around the young man in front of him was endless, as if it would never fade away. Patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect, didn't you just say that I would have to pay with my life? Now I'm standing here and you took a few steps back. Is this the price you were talking about? Isn't this price a little too cheap? Zhuan slowly walked towards the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect, but he didn't touch the slaughtering abstinence violation blade. The slaughtering abstinence violation blade was too strong. If Zhuan wanted to suppress it, he would have to use his demonic eyes. However, the slaughtering abstinence violation blade was enough to deal with the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect. Zhuan didn't need to use it. After all, the slaughtering abstinence violation blade belonged to the monk in red clothes. The monk was a high-level great emperor. He had killed great emperors before. The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect was also a great emperor, but he was only a low-level one. Even though the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect knew how to use the Xiaoyao sword, he wasn't strong enough to deal with the slaughtering abstinence violation blade. When the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect saw Zhuan walking towards him, he started retreating. He was staring at the slaughtering abstinence violation blade with fear. He could sense that the slaughtering abstinence violation blade's qi was even more terrifying than his Xiaoyao sword. Your great emperor's weapon isn't a low-level great emperor's weapon? Is it a medium-level great emperor's weapon? Asked the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect. Zhuan was still walking slowly, but when he heard what the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect said, he was surprised. Great emperor's weapons were divided into different levels. The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect's Xiaoyao sword must be a low-level great emperor's weapon because the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect used to be a low-level great emperor's weapon. The slaughtering abstinence violation blade must be a high-level great emperor's weapon, thought Zhuan. Zhuowen had already experienced how terrifying the blood-robed monk was. He was an 8th-level great emperor and his battle prowess was monstrous. He could kill 9th-level great emperors. His massacre abstinence violation blade could be considered a high-grade monarch weapon. Moreover, it was a top-grade monarch weapon. What? You don't want to admit it? I wouldn't have thought that a little bastard like you would have a great emperor's weapon. But it seems like you haven't mastered it yet, said the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect, smiling coldly. What are you trying to say? Replied Zhuowen indifferently. What am I trying to say? So what if your weapon is a high-level great emperor's weapon? I'm the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect. The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect sealed his godly awareness in the Xiaoyao sword to save the Xiaoyao sect. Even if you have a medium-level monarch weapon, so what? You can't do anything to me. Lin Feng said, you can't do anything to me. A medium-level great emperor's weapon can't compete with a low-level great emperor's weapon. The patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect burst into laughter. He raised his right hand and pointed at the hilt of the Xiaoyao sword. A beam of white light shot up to the sky from the Xiaoyao sword. Boom boom boom. After this milky white light pillar finally rushed out, it immediately began to continuously condense. Finally, it condensed into a huge white figure that was a few thousand feet tall. This figure was wearing a long white robe and had a celestial demeanor. A faintly discernible aura involuntarily rose. Bzzz. The sound of a sword resonated in the air. Then the Xiaoyao sword started growing bigger and bigger. It turned into a gigantic sword, and the celestial being held it in his hand. Is that the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect? He summoned his godly awareness? It seems like the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect is determined to kill that little boy. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock as they stared at the huge, sage-like figure. They could feel the strength of the sage-like figure. At the same time, they recognized that it was the sect master's divine sense that was contained in the carefree sword. You're dead. The patriarch's godly awareness is terrifying. "You've never experienced it before," said the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect proudly. He pointed at Zhuowen and gloated. He knew that after the patriarch's godly awareness, Zhuowen wouldn't be able to do anything. Even if he had a medium-level Great Emperor's weapon, it would be useless. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect could see that Zhuowen wasn't familiar with the slaughtering abstinence violation blade. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect was right. Zhuowen hadn't had the slaughtering abstinence violation blade for a long time, and the slaughtering abstinence violation blade was extremely dense. Even Zhuowen couldn't control it. Zhuowen looked indifferent. He raised his right hand and used his mental strength to control the slaughtering abstinence violation blade. He moved it towards the patriarch's godly awareness. Xiao Yao Zizai. The patriarch's godly awareness smiled indifferently. Then he shook the Xiao Yao sword in his right hand. Suddenly, an invisible sword qi filled the air. It was as smooth as flowing water. Following which, Zhuowen was shocked to discover that when the formless sword lights spread out in front of him, they actually went berserk, revealing their hidden fangs, wanting to deal a fatal blow to Zhuowen. Slash! The slaughtering abstinence violation saber slashed out, and a violent qi of slaughter blossomed, forming a blood-red vortex. It swept up the sword light that suddenly went from soft to firm. The slaughtering oath-breaking blade was very violent. After releasing the sword light in front of it, it made a buzzing sound and directly rushed toward the phantom of the first-generation sect master. It wanted to split and destroy this huge phantom. Chapter 1059. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect was dead. Zhuowen frowned as he looked at the slaughtering oath-breaking blade that had been sent flying. He was a little surprised that the sect master of this generation's divine sense was so powerful that it could unleash the terrifying power of the carefree sword. Zhuowen couldn't help but think about the godly awareness in the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade. His back was covered with cold sweat. Back then, the monk hadn't released his godly awareness. Instead, he had used it to attack Zhuowen. Zhuowen knew that if the monk had released his godly awareness, Zhuowen would have been a dead man. After all, the slaughtering abstinence violation blade had been able to unleash such a powerful attack just by relying on the divine sense contained within the blade, causing Zhuowen to be exhausted and almost lose his life. If he had released his divine sense, Zhuowen would not have been able to withstand a single blow. But the godly awareness must have been taken away by Xiaohe. I don't know if it was destroyed or not. Zhuowen frowned and murmured to himself. Bzz. The slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade was much more powerful than the patriarch had expected. The slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade, which had been sent flying away, made a buzzing sound. Surprisingly, the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade didn't seem to be afraid of death at all. Terrifying murderous qi rose up in the air. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of metal colliding was unceasingly heard. The slaughtering Buddhist commandment blade collided with the Xiao Yao sword again and again. The sky above the Xiao Yao sect was filled with lightning and thunder. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect frowned. Even though the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade was at a disadvantage, the Xiao Yao sword wasn't able to defeat the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade. Instead, they were in a stalemate. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect felt that something was wrong. Although he had never seen a mid-tier emperor weapon before, a mid-tier emperor weapon that couldn't unleash its full power shouldn't be a match for a low-tier emperor weapon that could unleash its full power. But now, the Xiao Yao sword couldn't defeat the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect was confused. Could a medium-level great emperor weapon really be that strong? Slash! The illusory shadow of the first sect master shouted and slashed out with the freedom sword in his hand. A huge crescent-shaped sword radiance gushed out from the crack in the void and slashed out toward the slaughtering oath-breaking saber. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of metal clashing rang out. The crescent-shaped sword radiance arrived as expected and slammed heavily on the slaughtering oath-breaking blade. Then the entire space seemed to have frozen. The slaughtering oath-breaking blade was sent flying, and the bloody aura on its surface began to dim. When the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect saw that, he looked extremely happy. All he had to do was break through Zhuo Wen's defense and he would definitely die. Take advantage of the victory and pursue. Kill! Shouted the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect furiously. The patriarch nodded and jumped forwards. He appeared in front of the deadly Buddhist abstinence blade. He raised his Xiao Yao sword and crashed onto the deadly Buddhist abstinence blade's blade. Then, sparks appeared. Those sparks looked like stars in the sky. The slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade was sent flying away. The slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade became dimmer. It looked like it was going to disappear at any moment. Kill him! Shouted the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect happily. He pointed at the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect and shouted. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect listened to him and slashed down with his Xiao Yao sword. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect's godly awareness was set to obey the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. Therefore, he had to obey the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect unconditionally. That little boy is going to die. The carefree sword slashed down from the sky, and this scene was firmly imprinted in the eyes of everyone in the square. The power of this sword was very terrifying. Wherever it passed, the space collapsed inch by inch, like glass shattering. Even the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect, who was at the top of the celestial Zun realm, would die in front of that sword. Even though Zhuan was strong, that sword was terrifying. Zhuan couldn't resist that sword. However, Zhuo Wen's gaze remained calm. He raised his head slightly and stared at the unfettered sword that was getting closer and closer. The wild sword sound was like a myriad of thunderbolts, constantly ringing in his ears. Wild gales blew over and lifted Zhuo Wen's wild blood-red hair. It seems like I have to grab the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade to break the Xiao Yao sword's godly awareness? Zhuo Wen sighed softly. His face was expressionless. He waved his right hand, and the slaughtering abstinence violation blade that had been sent flying flew back to him. Zhuo Wen caught it in his hand. Boom! The moment Zhuo Wen grasped the slaughtering abstinence violation blade, the originally dim blade began to glow with a demonic light. Following that, a terrifying aura of slaughter surged into Zhuo Wen's body, flowing through his meridians in an attempt to assimilate his entire body. Demonic eye! Zhuo Wen groaned and summoned the demonic eye between his eyebrows. The black demonic eye blinked and swallowed a part of the slaughter chi that was eroding Zhuo Wen's body. It was within Zhuo Wen's tolerance. Die! With the slaughtering oath-breaking blade in hand, Zhuo Wen's temperament immediately changed. He became murderous, like a war-crazed demon god. The murderous aura from the slaughtering oath-breaking blade caused Zhuo Wen's aura to surge to the limit. The Xiao Yao sword was fast. It fell from the sky and arrived above Zhuo Wen's head in an instant. The milky white halo stretched across the sky and turned into a bridge. It was dazzling and magnificent. Slash! Zhuo Wen spat out a single word as he brandished the slaughtering abstinence violation blade in his hand. Immediately, boundless killing aura surged as a blood-colored blade shadow appeared in the void. Next, it heavily collided with the descending carefree sword. Dunk! A sound that resembled the sound of a bronze bell rang out. Following which, the entire void trembled violently. The milky white halo and the berserk blood-red radiance divided the horizon into two regions, one red and one white. It was extremely dazzling. That guy. He blocked it? The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect stood in the sky and stared at the white and red lights in the sky. He whispered to himself. Break! Zhuo Wen held the slaughtering abstinence violation blade in his right hand and slashed out again. At the same time, the demonic eye on his forehead blinked and surged with surging demonic energy. The slaughtering abstinence violation blade in his hand surged with an even more intense killing intent. In a flash, Zhuo Wen's blade changed drastically. In one breath, countless blade shadows appeared. Each one was more terrifying than the previous one. The seventh slash. When the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade reached the seventh slash, the milky white halo around the Xiao Yao sword disappeared. The eighth slash. The Xiao Yao sword started to move back. The patriarch's shadow was also pushed back by the red light. The ninth slash. With a furious roar, Zhuo Wen fiercely slashed out the ninth blade. The frenzied blade shadows formed a blood-colored vortex light pillar that reached the sky. This terrifying blood-colored vortex light pillar violently surged out and directly pierced through the illusory figure of the sect master. The latter was also heavily injured and began to become more and more illusory. The 10th slash. After the 10th slash, a huge saber shadow fell from the sky and crushed down. Instantly, the shadow of the sect master was turned into white powder by this saber shadow. Bzz. The Xiao Yao sword shrieked and turned back into a 3-foot-long sword. It flew back into the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect's hand. He broke the patriarch's godly awareness? That great imperial weapon. How can it be so strong? The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect held the Xiao Yao sword and moved back a few dozen meters. He couldn't believe it. Zhuan didn't say anything. He jumped again and condensed slaughter chi. In a flash, he arrived in front of the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. Bang! The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect raised his Xiao Yao sword to block the attack. Unfortunately, it was useless. The Xiao Yao sword was knocked away by the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect spat out blood and moved back. He stared at Zhuan with fear in his eyes. Come! The moment the unfettered sword was sent flying, Zhuan waved his right hand and the unfettered sword immediately flew into his hand. After carefully examining it for a while, he unceremoniously put it into his spirit ring. That's the ancestral weapon of the Xiao Yao sect. How dare you take it away? Shouted the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect furiously. The Xiao Yao sect is about to be destroyed. Why would you need an ancestral weapon? Said Zhuan mockingly. He raised his murderous Buddhist abstinence blade high in the air. His terrifying murderous chi turned into a hurricane which surrounded the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect. The patriarch's escape route was blocked. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect's face was deathly pale, especially when he sensed the hurricane around him. He knew he had no way out now. What level is your Buddhist abstinence blade? Asked the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect, staring at the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade. Zhuan looked indifferent and said, You're about to die, so there's no harm in telling you. This Buddhist abstinence blade is called the slaughtering Buddhist abstinence blade. It's been used to kill 9th-layer great emperors. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect's pupils shrank. He smiled wryly and said, I see. It's a high-level great imperial weapon. No wonder it's so strong. I didn't lose in vain. So, you can die now. Then he raised his deadly Buddhist abstinence blade and cut the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect's head in two. He couldn't be any more dead than that. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect had died. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect is dead? The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect couldn't believe it. The patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect, who had been holding the Xiao Yao sword, couldn't escape death. It was all because of the young man with blood-red hair. The patriarch is dead. Let's run. When the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect died, the disciples of the Xiao Yao sect who were on the other side of the square threw away their weapons and ran away from the square. Chapter 1060. Encirclement. The sect master of the Xiao Yao sect was killed and the Xiao Yao sword was stolen? Everyone was stunned for a long time before they came back to their senses. They looked at each other and fell into silence. The Xiao Yao sect, which had stood in West Trench City for hundreds of years, had actually started to decline because of a young man. Even though they hadn't been uprooted, the patriarch of the Xiao Yao sect and the 5 celestial Zun elders had been killed. The Xiao Yao sect had lost its core members. Zhuan landed in front of Mo Lingtian and the other 3. He ignored the exclamations of the surrounding people and asked solemnly, Jianan, I heard you say that the young sect master of the Xiao Yao sect was not killed by the 3 of you? Jianan nodded and said, Brother Zhua, we can swear that the death of the young sect master of the Xiao Yao sect has nothing to do with us. Back then, the young sect master coveted me and Sister Gatha's beauty and wanted to use force. However, he did not expect that the 3 of us were far stronger than the Xuanzun realm. He suffered a little and was taught a lesson by us. After that, he left in embarrassment. Xian Xing added, If it wasn't you who killed him, then who killed him? Moreover, he died after being taught a lesson by the three of you. Mo Lingtian frowned and said in a strange tone. Framing. Zhuowen said indifferently. Framing? Who would frame us? We just entered the academy not long ago. Why would someone frame us? Jianan frowned and said. Zhuowen's eyes flashed with a trace of coldness. He said softly, I'm afraid it's not because of you. It's because of me. The four of them were startled as a pondering expression appeared in their eyes. They were clearly aware of just how powerful Zhuowen was when he had entered the Jiaxin Academy and had offended many people. It was still reasonable to say that Zhuowen had framed Jianan and the other two. However, who was the mastermind behind this? This time, let's not go back together. We'll go separately, Zhuowen suddenly said to Mo Lingtian and the other three. Mo Lingtian and the other three looked at each other and hesitated. Don't worry. If the mastermind behind this is really because of me, I'm afraid that the purpose is to lure me out. It's really not worth it for you to take the risk with me. Moreover, you have all seen my strength just now, haven't you? So you don't have to worry too much. Zhuowen chuckled. Hearing this, Mo Lingtian and the other three nodded and said, Brother Zhuo, be careful. I know you have a lot of tricks up your sleeve, but don't fight too hard. When it's time to retreat, retreat. Don't worry, I'm not someone who doesn't know when to back down. The four of you can leave first. Zhuowen smiled and nodded. Good. Be careful. Mo Lingtian and the other three nodded again. With a step, they left the carefree square like a wisp of smoke and headed towards the outer courtyard. As he watched the four figures gradually disappear from his line of sight, Zhuowen's expression slowly darkened. With a step, Zhuowen suddenly leapt into the air. Just as he was about to break through the air, a binding force suddenly appeared above the carefree sect. Oh! Zhuowen's brows slightly furrowed. Under this binding force, his body suddenly froze in the air. Soon after, Zhuowen's cold eyes faintly swept across the mountain range where the carefree sect was located. It was as if he wanted to see through everything hidden within this pitch-black mountain range. A wisp of black light swept out from between Zhuowen's brows. Soon after, his entire body was covered in cold dragon scales. Zhuowen's eyes were replaced by a dark gold color. His gaze also became much sharper, as if he could see through everything. Break for me! Zhuowen angrily roared. His hands, which were covered in dragon scales, violently swung. Instantly, the binding force on his body crumbled under this powerful force. Soon after, Zhuowen attempted to break through the air again. Boom! After Zhuowen had flown dozens of meters, a thick golden barrier suddenly appeared, blocking Zhuowen's path. He heavily smashed against this barrier, causing Zhuowen to involuntarily retreat dozens of steps. His expression became extremely solemn. Who is it? Zhuowen simply stopped in the air and coldly shouted as he coldly swept his gaze across the enormous mountain range below. Ha! Zhuowen, your reaction is really slow. We've been hiding in the mountain range for so long and you still haven't discovered us? A deep voice suddenly sounded out. Soon after, 6 figures flew over from the mountain range below. The one in the lead was wearing a long golden robe and his eyes were filled with arrogance. Emperor Jin, Emperor Feng, Emperor Lan, Emperor Qing, and, sweeping his gaze across the 4 people with terrifying auras, Zhuowen's gaze finally landed on the other 2 figures beside the 4 great Emperor Realm warriors. Blue Smoke and Grand Lily? Blue Smoke had a refined smile at the corner of his mouth. He cupped his hands toward Zhuowen in a rather hypocritical manner and said, Brother Zhuo, it's been a long time since we last met. Blue Smoke also misses you. Zhuowen completely ignored Blue Smoke's hypocritical politeness. His gaze was fixed on Grand Lily as he said indifferently, I didn't expect you to be involved. Hearing this, Grand Lily bit her lower lip with her pearly white teeth. Her beautiful eyes stared at Zhuowen as she said, You are really Zhuowen from the Qingxian Empire? Zhuowen laughed. What does that have to do with you? Grand Lily's beautiful face froze. She gritted her teeth and said, Emperor Qing has already told me that you are Zhuowen from the Qingxian Empire. Are you still not going to admit it? What does it have to do with you whether I admit it or not? Who are you to me? Zhuowen's gaze turned cold. His fiancée in name back then had already openly teamed up with Emperor Qing to harm him. Now, Zhuowen's heart was extremely cold. There were even traces of killing intent in his heart. It doesn't matter if you don't admit it. The aura of the dragon soul on your body is not a lie. You are Zhuowen from the Qingxian Empire. Grand Lily's voice turned cold as she stared at Zhuowen with her beautiful eyes. But today, you came with Emperor Qing and the rest to kill me? Zhuowen said indifferently. You killed my father. The enmity of killing my father is irreconcilable, Grand Lily said coldly. Since that's the case, there's nothing more to say. After saying that, Zhuowen turned his attention back to Supreme Jin and said, You were the ones who killed the unfettered sex young master, right? You were also the ones who arranged for me to be framed, weren't you? Smart. Previously, you had played at cicada shedding its shell trick in front of the four of us. Did you think that we would let you off so easily? Jia Nan and the other two were your best friends. If we didn't attack them, why would you appear? However, you're quite alert. You actually allowed the four of them to leave first. Supreme Jin laughed icily. Were Lan Yen and Grand Lily the ones who provided the information? Zhuowen asked again. You're not stupid. It was us. Grand Lily raised her head and stared coldly at Zhuowen. She knew very well that with 4 Emperor-level powerhouses involved, Zhuowen would not be able to escape this time. With the 4 of us here, don't even think about running away. Obediently hand over the unfettered sword and the other Emperor weapon. At the same time, hand over your spiritual ring and I'll consider leaving your corpse intact. Supreme Jin spread out his right hand and said indifferently. What if I don't hand it over? Zhuowen asked with a sinister look in his eyes. You don't want to hand it over? Then die. Supreme Jin's eyes curled into a dangerous arc. He then stomped his foot and a terrifying Emperor-level aura surged out. 9 golden stars descended from the sky and turned into the star territory that was unique to Emperor-level powerhouses. Supreme Jin stepped into the void and instantly appeared above Zhuowen. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. He had wanted to kill this hateful brat for a long time. The Alcade Sacred Court's 3rd prince had all been killed by this brat. Their hatred had reached a point where they would not rest until one of them was dead. Furthermore, Zhuowen's fearless attitude had pissed Supreme Jin off for a long time. Therefore, as soon as Zhuowen finished speaking, he immediately attacked. Since the Zhuowen was not willing to hand it over, he could still snatch the 2 Emperor weapons from him after killing him. The moment Supreme Jin made his move, the other 3 martial emperors did not make their move. Instead, they stood at the back and watched silently. Supreme Jin had the strongest cultivation base among the 4 of them. He was a 3rd-level martial emperor. It would be a piece of cake for him to take care of Zhuowen. Blue Smoke and Grand Lily sneered. At this moment, they already regarded Zhuowen as a dead man. No matter how monstrous Zhuowen was, it was unlikely that he would be a match for a 3rd Heaven Emperor. Rumble. As soon as the Emperor's aura descended, Zhuowen felt his entire body being shrouded by a heavy pressure. It was as if his entire body was being crushed by countless mountains. Die! A huge golden palm surrounded by 9 stars came crashing down on Zhuowen, intending to completely suppress Zhuowen. Break! Zhuowen roared angrily. Suddenly, a dragon's roar erupted from his body. Then, a black dragon shadow emerged from his body and circled around him, instantly breaking the terrifying Emperor's aura that enveloped his entire body. Dragon wings. Open. With a low roar, 3 pairs of huge dragon wings unfurled. Zhuowen's speed soared to the extreme and he disappeared from where he was standing. At the same time, the huge golden palm came crashing down from the sky and slammed into the void where Zhuowen had been. Terrifying golden light gushed out, annihilating the small space where Zhuowen had been. Countless cracks appeared in that small space. The power of an Emperor-level powerhouse's attack was terrifying. Zhuowen, who had retreated a few hundred meters away, looked at the annihilated space and was shocked. Supreme Jin's power was truly terrifying. What a slippery little bastard. Let's see how many moves you can dodge. Supreme Jin's indifferent voice rang out from the void. Then, another huge golden palm came crashing down from the sky and landed on top of Zhuowen's head. Damn it! Zhuan roared. With a stomp of his foot, he immediately dashed to the other side in an attempt to dodge Supreme Jin's attack. Little bastard! The prince of the Alcade Sacred Dynasty is not that easy to kill. Since you've killed him, you'll have to pay the price. Chapter 1061. Burial at Sea. You've killed my blue whale Holy Court's crown prince, Yun Zhongyang. Don't even think about leaving this place alive today. Just as Emperor Feng attacked, Emperor Lan appeared on the other side of Emperor Feng with the boundless power of the sea, blocking off Zhuowen's other escape route. Yun, let's not talk about our grudges. You won't be able to escape today. Emperor Qin leisurely appeared behind Zhuan with 9 green stars revolving around him. There was a mocking smile on his face. Boom! Just as Wind Emperor, Lan Emperor, and Qing Emperor blocked Zhuowen's 3 escape routes, Jin Emperor's attack also arrived in an instant. A golden palm, which was as large as a mountain, came crashing down on Zhuowen's head. The terrifying power caused Lan Yen and Grand Lily to shudder in fear. This Zhuowen is finished. Lan Yan's lips curled into a mocking smile as she chuckled. Grand Lily's beautiful eyes were filled with complicated emotions. Aside from that, there was also deep hatred. Yun had killed her father, Grand Haohai. She would never forget the grudge of killing her father. However, what she didn't expect was that back then, it was their grand family who had pressured Zhuowen in every way possible. Moreover, that Grand Haohai had tried every possible means to kill Zhuowen. That Grand Haohai's death was merely a result of his own actions. Zhuowen's eyes darkened in the face of everyone's mocking gazes. When Emperor Jin's golden palm came crashing down, a jade-colored leaf appeared in Zhuowen's hand. He immediately crushed it and disappeared from the encirclement of the 4 Emperor Realm experts as though he had teleported. Boom! The golden palm once again missed its target. Supreme Jin's eyes narrowed while Supreme Emperor Qing and the other 2 revealed a look of astonishment. They never thought that Zhuowen would actually possess a treasure that could allow him to teleport. Bang! Zhuowen reappeared a few miles away from the 4 great emperors. There was an invisible barrier in front of him. Originally, he wanted to use the 9 Autumn's wind to teleport 1,000 miles away to escape the pursuit of the 4 great emperors. However, when he moved a few miles away, he was stopped by the invisible barrier in front of him, and Jun was knocked dizzy. Ha! It's useless. We've already set up an inescapable net for you. This time, you won't be able to escape even if you grow wings. It's better for you to obediently stay here and accept your death. Supreme Jin laughed heartily. Golden light erupted from his body and he charged toward Jun once again. The other 3 martial emperors were not to be outdone either. They followed behind Supreme Jin and their eyes were filled with mockery. This time, they had planned this for a long time. They had used Jia Nan, Gatha, Xian Xing, and Zhuowen's relationship with Zhuowen to lure him to West Path City. Their goal was to kill him. Ever since they had been toyed with by Zhuowen, the 4 great emperors had become much smarter. They had set up an inescapable net in advance in order to trap Zhuowen. Trying to escape in vain. What wishful thinking. Blue Smoke stood quietly on the other side and watched. The corners of his mouth were filled with a cold smile. Zhuowen's expression was ugly. He stomped his foot and dashed towards the other side. However, he was disappointed to see that an invisible barrier had appeared on the other side as well. In other words, Supreme Jin and the others had already set up a restrictive barrier in the surrounding dozens of miles. When Zhuowen arrived at this place, they had activated the restrictive barrier and completely trapped him. The 4 martial emperors, led by Supreme Jin, sneered as they stared at Zhuowen who was trying to escape. Their eyes were filled with mockery. With the restrictive barrier in place, they were not afraid of Zhuowen escaping. Hence, they were not in a hurry to kill Zhuowen. When he realized that the restrictive barrier had been set up all around him, Zhuowen's eyes darkened and he gave up on the idea of escaping. Why don't you continue to run? Why aren't you running away anymore? Supreme Jin slowly walked toward Zhuowen. His eyes were filled with mockery and iciness. Back then, Zhuowen had killed Zhuowen in front of him and had thoroughly angered him. Hence, he must kill Zhuowen. Zhuowen, today you must die. Accept your fate. Supreme Jean arrived beside Supreme Jean and said indifferently. Supreme Jean and Supreme Feng walked silently behind them without saying a word. However, one could tell from the look in their eyes that they shared the same thoughts as Supreme Lan and Supreme Qing. Sush. Zhuan did not say anything. He stomped his foot once again and instantly dashed towards the other side at an extremely fast speed. Are you still struggling? You really won't give up until all hope is gone. Supreme Jin's lips curled into a smile. He was not worried that Zhuan would escape at all. Not good. This kid is heading towards Blue Smoke and Grand Lily. The smile on Emperor Lan's face had just blossomed when he heard Emperor Qing's shout. The smile on his face immediately froze. His eyes widened as he looked at Zhuan. Sure enough, he realized that Zhuan was heading in the direction where Lan Yen and Grand Lily were. Both of you run. Emperor Lan roared angrily. With a stomp of his foot, he flew away in a hurry while Emperor Qing followed closely behind with a dark look in his eyes. Although Emperor Jin and Emperor Feng were a little surprised, they were not as anxious as Emperor Qing and Emperor Feng. After all, Blue Smoke and Grand Lily were not the geniuses of the Alcade Sacred Dynasty. Naturally, they did not care. Their main goal this time was to kill Zhuan. Run! Blue Smoke and Grand Lily also noticed Zhuan rushing towards them. Their expressions changed and they quickly retreated. They knew how strong Zhuan was. Although Blue Smoke was at the peak of the Golden Exalt stage, he still did not dare to fight against Yun. As for Grand Lily, he was only at the Supreme Being stage, let alone being a match for Jun. Can you run? Since you are the traitors, you will have to pay the price. Zhuan's eyes were filled with killing intent. The two of them were the culprits who had attracted the attention of the four emperors. How could Zhuan let them go? Zhuan tapped his forehead with his right hand and took out the Supreme Dragon Cauldron. He raised his right hand and a dragon's roar was heard. The 81 dragon's aura that was contained in the Supreme Dragon Cauldron suddenly emerged and turned into a sea of dragons, blocking the escape route of Blue Smoke and Grand Lily. Looking at the terrifying dragon's aura in front of them, Blue Smoke and Grand Lily's faces turned pale. They could not help but tremble. They did not dare to face Zhuan. After all, he had killed the patriarch of the Xiaoyao sect and he had an emperor weapon. They were no match for him. Don't kill us or you will die miserably. Blue Smoke shouted and started to speak incoherently. Do you think if I don't kill you, my fate will change? That's ridiculous. Zhuan smiled mockingly. He waved his right hand and the dragon's aura surrounded Blue Smoke and Grand Lily. Then, Zhuan appeared in front of Blue Smoke and lifted him up. Release Blue Smoke. Release Grand Lily. The Blue Emperor and the Green Emperor roared at the same time. Their speed soared to the limit. Unfortunately, the two of them were originally some distance away from Zhuowen. Now, they could not reach Zhuowen immediately. Ridiculous. Zhuowen completely ignored the Blue Emperor and the Green Emperor who were roaring angrily. He grabbed Lan Yan's head with his sharp dragon claws and exerted force. Blue Smoke shouted. The sound of bones breaking resounded in the air. Blue Smoke lost his life. It's your turn. Grand Lily. After killing Lan Yan, Zhuowen's gaze landed on Grand Lily. There was not a trace of emotion in his voice. Don't kill me. I used to be your fiancé. How can you kill me? Grand Lily's eyes were filled with fear as she screamed. You have been divorced by me. You have nothing to do with me anymore. Originally, we could have stayed out of each other's business. Unfortunately, you chose to go against me. Don't blame me for being merciless. Zhuowen didn't waste his breath any longer. His right palm abruptly blasted out as a strand of origin energy gushed out and blasted onto Grant Lily's forehead. The extremely invasive origin energy surged into Grant Lily's body, causing Grant Lily's eyes to open wide as her vitality was severed. Before she died, Grand Lily's eyes were filled with regret. It had been so long. Why did she continue to be entangled with Zhuan? She had already successfully entered the outer court of the Garcia Divine Academy. If she worked hard in her cultivation in the future, her achievements would definitely not be weak. At that time, she would be able to return to the Qingxian Empire and revitalize the Grand Family. But now, because of the hatred in her heart, She had completely lost her life. Boom. After killing Grand Lily and Lan Yen, Azure Emperor and Azure Emperor's attacks arrived as scheduled. Their attacks, which exuded Emperor's might, crushed down like the heavens. Exterminating oath-breaking blade. Zhuan shouted. A blood-red oath-breaking blade appeared in his hand. He swung it behind him and a blood-red killing aura surged out. It slashed against the attacks of the two Emperor Realm experts. Buzz. The exterminating oath-breaking blade only lasted for a moment before it was sent flying by the terrifying attack. The surface of the exterminating oath-breaking blade dimmed a little, and the murderous aura that was surging out of it was also slowly withdrawn. Zhuan spat out a mouthful of blood. He raised his right hand and caught the exterminating oath-breaking blade. He retreated 100 steps and stared at Emperor Lan and Emperor Qing, who were not far away. "You're courting death. I'm going to kill you." Looking at Blue Smoke, who was already dead, Emperor Lan was enraged. The only monstrous genius of their Blue Whale Holy Dynasty had died in the hands of Zhuan. Emperor Lan had almost lost his mind. Without saying a word, Emperor Lan rushed in front of Zhuan again. Waves of terrifying blue oceanic energy surged out. In an instant, monstrous tsunamis surged in the surroundings. Wave after wave rushed toward Zhuan. Zhuowen's entire body was surrounded by countless tsunamis. He slashed out again and again. Although each slash could split apart a tsunami, the tsunamis around him seemed to be endless. Every time one was destroyed, another would be born. It was extremely frightening and terrifying. Futile struggle. Burial at sea. Chapter 1062. Dragon Domain. Zhuowen groaned and retreated several dozen steps. His face turned a little pale as he looked at the giant wave that was nearly 100 feet tall. The burial at sea that the Blue Emperor had used was extremely terrifying. He had probably used his full strength in an attempt to kill Zhuowen. Could absorb all 81 strands of dragon might from the Supreme Dragon Cauldron. Xiao Hei's voice finally rang out at this moment. His voice was filled with seriousness. Absorb the dragon might? Zhuowen's eyes narrowed. However, he did not doubt Xiao Hei's words. Back then, it was Xiao Hei who had asked him to absorb the dragon might from the dragon vein into the Supreme Dragon Cauldron to nurture it. Moreover, the effects of the Supreme Dragon Cauldron were pretty good. After half a year of nurturing, the dragon might was much more powerful than before. Absorb! Zhuan cried out as he thought of this. The 81 strands of dragon might around him were all absorbed into his body under his control. For a time, dragon roars continuously rang out from within Zhuowen's body. Lift the dragon scale on your right claw and take out a drop of dragon blood, Xiao Hei said again. Zhuan was taken aback. Soon after, he nodded and did as he was told. He lifted the dragon scale on his right claw and a drop of dark golden dragon blood flowed out. With my dragon blood, the dragon might of the Azure Dragon, condense the dragon domain. A solemn voice rang out in Zhuowen's heart. Zhuan could not help but recite it as well. Immediately, dragon silhouettes that were roaring towards the sky surged out around him. These dragon silhouettes were bound by black chains. One end of the chains was tied to the dragon silhouettes, while the other end was tied to Zhuowen's body. It was as if Zhuan was controlling these terrifyingly powerful giant dragons with the chains alone. It was extremely terrifying, as if he was controlling 10,000 dragons by himself. Dragon domain? Did Xiao Hei ask me to nurture the 81 strands of dragon might in order to condense this strange dragon might? Zhuowen's eyes revealed a hint of contemplation. However, the 100 feet tall wave that descended from the sky did not give Zhuowen any time to think. In an instant, Zhuowen's entire body was enveloped by it. What terrifying energy from the sea! At this moment, Zhuowen was in the middle of the vast sea. There was an immense pressure in the deep sea. Zhuowen. Of Zhuowen's body. Fortunately, the dragon domain condensed from the dragon's blood and power just now protected Zhuowen firmly in the center, barely holding on in this deep sea environment. It's a pity that your dragon might has only been nurtured for a short period of time, so the dragon domain you can condense isn't very firm. Xiao Hei's voice rang out again, and there was a trace of pity in his voice. What exactly is this dragon domain? After defeating Zhuo Wen, Supreme Emperor Lan immediately yelled at Supreme Emperor Qin, Supreme Emperor Jin, and Supreme Emperor Feng behind him. He wanted to join forces with the three of them to attack Zhuo Wen together. Lan Di is right. This kid has many trump cards. We should attack together and end this quickly. Qin Di and the other two nodded and came to Lan Di's side. Qin Di chuckled and said, "The three of you, Feng Di and I have reserved the blood oath-breaking blade in this kid's hand. As for the other treasures, the two of you can split them equally." Lan Di and Qin Di cursed in their hearts. However, they did not dare to refute. Qin Di was the strongest among the four and he was a third-level great emperor. His words held the most weight among the four of them. Moreover, Feng Di was on his side. The two of them did not dare to go against Qin Di. "Since the treasures have been divided, let's kill this kid." As soon as Emperor Jin said this, he took the lead and charged forward. The 9 golden stars on his body turned into a starry domain which was extremely dazzling. Emperor Qin, Emperor Feng, and Emperor Lan also unleashed their own starry domains as destructive stars circled around their bodies. The four of them surrounded Zhuo Wen and attacked with their palms. The power of the stars and the terrifying Emperor's aura filled the entire space. The pitch-black skies seemed to be dyed with many colors. When the 4 great emperors released their 9 stars, there were a total of 36 huge stars. The dazzling starlight illuminated the entire Carefree Sect mountain range and West Path City. Those are Emperor stars? There are a total of 36 Emperor stars. Are 4 great emperors coming to West Path City? Finally, the attacks of the 4 Emperor Realm experts had completely drawn the attention of the cultivators in West Path City. When all the cultivators noticed the 36 stars that floated in the sky, their gazes revealed shock. The strongest person in West Path City was the Carefree Sect Master, who was a peak heavenly venerable. Other than the first Carefree Sect Master, there had not been an Emperor Realm cultivator in West Path City for hundreds of years. However, 4 great emperors had appeared in the sky above West Path City. For the cultivators in West Path City who had not seen great emperors for hundreds of years, it was an unprecedented visual impact. Look, the 4 great emperors are teaming up to attack one person. Who is that person? Why do 4 great emperors have to team up to capture him? When the 36 Emperor stars rose in the sky above West Path City, the crowd quickly noticed the figure surrounded by the 4 great emperors. The figure was shrouded in countless dragon shadows. It was hazy and they could not see his true face. Boom, boom. The attacks of the 4 Emperor Realm experts continued to pour out, bombarding the dragon domain continuously. Terrifying explosions spread out. This was the power of the Emperor Realm. The result of each of their attacks was not something an ordinary person could withstand. Zhuo Wen groaned as blood began to flow from the corner of his mouth. The dragon domain around him began to tremble and tremble. Zhuo Wen retreated again and again. His face was extremely pale. Zhuo Wen finally understood how terrifying the attacks of the 4 great emperors were. If it were not for the support of the dragon domain, Zhuo Wen would be a dead man. The dragon domain can't hold on for much longer. What should I do? Zhuo Wen was burning with anxiety as he muttered to himself. In 5 breaths' time, the surrounding dragon shadows began to wail and cracks appeared on the surface. Zhuo Wen's blood began to flow more and more from his mouth. The blood in his body churned like a tsunami. Bang! In the end, the dragon domain completely collapsed. A heavenly attack passed through the shattered dragon shadows and smashed towards Zhuo Wen. Sun fire. Boundless fire of the sun gushed out and surrounded Zhuo Wen, forming an impenetrable wall of fire. Unfortunately, although the sun fire was strong, the attacks of the 4 great emperors were too terrifying. As soon as they came into contact with the wall of fire was completely destroyed and continued to surge toward Zhuo Wen. Slash! Zhuo Wen kept retreating. His right hand gripped the exterminating Buddhist commandment blade and slashed down from above his head, slamming heavily on the incoming attack. Bang! 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 Continuous explosions rang out. Then Thuan felt a sharp pain in the web between his thumb and index finger. Blood flowed out of his mouth as he spat out another mouthful of blood and flew backwards. Die! The four martial emperors arrived abruptly. They exchanged a glance and launched another terrifying attack. Four attacks surged out like four roaming dragons, rushing toward Zhuowen from all directions. They wanted to blast him into smithereens. Damn it! You're really troublesome. Looks like I'll have to use such a good thing again. Chapter 1063. Massacre Destruction Bang Bang Bang. The four martial emperors' attacks came crashing down. However, the murderous aura from the massacre abstinence violation blade had already wrapped around Jun. Hence, the four attacks were all blocked by the murderous aura. Oh, what's going on? That emperor weapon is emitting such a terrifying murderous aura. Supreme Jin and the other three frowned when they saw this. They came to a halt and stared at Jun, who was wrapped in murderous aura, in astonishment. Let's blast this murderous aura apart. I don't care what tricks he has up his sleeves. Can't we break it apart if we join forces? Supreme Jin coldly snorted. He then took a step forward and immediately charged towards the gathering murderous aura. The other three nodded and followed behind Supreme Jin. The power in their bodies rose to the maximum as they prepared to kill Zhuowen at any time. The four of them arrived at the core of the murderous aura. At this moment, the blood-colored murderous aura surged and gathered, forming a blood-colored vortex. Zhuowen's figure was faintly discernible within the vortex. Blast open the murderous aura and kill this little bastard. Supreme Jin instructed before he made the first move. He reached out with his right hand and the 9 golden orbs immediately surged with violent star energy and gathered in the center of his palm. The blazing golden light made it seem as if a small golden sun was being nurtured in his palm. The other three also mobilized their star energy, intending to use their full strength to break open the blood-colored vortex and kill Zhuowen, who was hidden within. Boom boom boom. 4 rays of star energy blasted out and a heavenly might filled the air. However, the 4 of them frowned because their attacks felt as if they had fallen into a swamp and could not break through at all. At this moment, Zhuowen, who was deep within the blood-colored vortex, slowly opened his eyes. His gaze was filled with confusion because all he could see was the color of blood. Where am I? Zhuowen instinctively asked. Could I let go of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber? This dragon lord has already gone all out. I completely released the spiritual sense of the scarlet-clad monk that I collected last time. Since these 4 fellows are still haunting you, I might as well teach them a lesson they will remember well. Xiao He came before Zhuowen and said with a gloomy expression, this monk was a high-level martial emperor. Even if it was just a strand of his divine sense, it was still as vast as the ocean. It would be of great benefit to Xiao He. Initially, Xiao He had planned to slowly absorb this divine sense. Unfortunately, her plan could not keep up with the changes. Supreme Jin and the others were like sticky candy as they pestered Zhuowen relentlessly, determined to kill him. Xiao He could not possibly let Zhuowen die, so she had no choice but to use the power of the blood-red monk's divine sense. Didn't you say that you had erased the divine thoughts of the monk in bloody garments? I didn't expect you to collect them yourself. Zhuowen was stunned and then snorted coldly. Xiao He smiled awkwardly and said, the power of this monk's divine sense is not small. It is a great supplement for this dragon lord. Unfortunately, I have no choice but to use it now. Kid, quickly let go of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. The divine sense of the monk in bloody garments is about to appear. This is the divine sense of a high-level martial emperor. The power it can unleash is extremely terrifying. Zhuowen nodded and gently let go of his right hand. Instantly, the slaughtering abstinence violation saber buzzed and shot out from the center of the blood-colored vortex. The 4 people who were watching from outside the blood-colored vortex suddenly felt a chill run down their spines. Soon after, the slaughtering abstinence violation saber broke through the vortex and slashed towards Emperor Feng. Emperor Feng was the weakest among the 4. His cultivation was only at the 1st level of the martial emperor realm. How dare you attack me? You're courting death. Looking at the blood-colored abstinence violation saber, Emperor Feng was not afraid. Instead, his eyes were filled with greed. Previously, the power of the blood-colored abstinence violation saber was very weak. Therefore, Emperor Feng was not afraid of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. Wind! Emperor Feng roared and his hands began to gather a frenzied hurricane. The 9 stars above his head were formed by an extremely powerful hurricane and contained traces of the law of wind. Swoosh! The slaughtering abstinence violation saber turned into a demonic crimson light. Although it was still a few hundred meters away, it arrived in front of Emperor Feng in the blink of an eye. Emperor Feng was still gathering the power of wind slowly, and he did not expect danger to approach him. When the slaughtering abstinence violation saber arrived in front of him, Emperor Feng realized that something was amiss. He raised his head and saw the slaughtering abstinence violation saber in front of him. What's going on? Why is the speed of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber so fast? Emperor Feng's eyes narrowed and he roared. He raised his hands and the incomplete power of wind surged out in an attempt to block the saber. However, there was not the slightest hint of anxiety in Emperor Feng's eyes. He was well aware of the power of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. It would be difficult for it to hurt him. Therefore, he was not very concerned about the attack from the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. Crack! However, when the slaughtering abstinence violation saber arrived in front of the power of wind could not withstand a single blow and was instantly broken. Then, the crimson light transformed and pierced through Emperor Feng's forehead. Swoosh! A stream of blood spurted out. Emperor Feng's eyes were wide open in anger as he looked up at the sky. Blood flowed out from his forehead like a broken dam. How is this possible? Why has the power of the slaughtering abstinence violation saber increased so much? I can't accept this. Emperor Feng roared and his physical body finally collapsed. Immediately, the nascent soul in his dantian rushed out of his physical body and headed towards Emperor Jin. Emperor Jin, save me! Emperor Feng's terrified voice rang out. Unfortunately, Emperor Feng's nascent soul did not rush out for long. Another crimson light flashed past and pierced through his nascent soul. Crimson energy filled the air and Emperor Feng's nascent soul immediately collapsed and dissipated. Everything happened too quickly. From the collapse of Emperor Feng's physical body to the destruction of his nascent soul, it all happened in an instant. Emperor Feng, a first heaven emperor, had fallen just like that? Emperor Feng is dead? Before Emperor Jin, Emperor Lan, and Emperor Qin could regain their senses, they saw Emperor Feng's nascent soul completely dissipate in front of their eyes. A martial emperor had fallen just like that in front of them. After killing Emperor Feng's nascent soul, the slaughtering abstinence violation saber turned into a crimson light and returned to the crimson vortex. At this moment, Nguyen had already walked out of the crimson vortex. The crimson vortex began to churn and eventually formed a human figure. It was a monk dressed in crimson robes. His eyes were as deep as the sea and carried a trace of indifference towards the world. The Buddha is the heart and the heart is the Buddha. The heart and the Buddha are objects. If one knows that there are no objects and no heart, then one is a true Dharmakaya Buddha. The monk in crimson robes spat out a faint Buddhist proverb. Soon after, the corners of the monk's lips slowly curled into a demonic smile. He gently reached out with his right hand and grabbed the slaughtering abstinence violation saber. All things in the world are massacres. If there is no end to all things, there will be no end to massacres. If you want to stop massacres, the only way is to kill all things. To become a Buddha, one must kill. As soon as he spoke, the monk in crimson robes glanced indifferently at Zhuan behind him. He then turned his gaze towards Emperor Jin and the other two in front of him. The murderous aura on his body grew denser and denser. The divine consciousness of an emperor weapon? This kid actually has the divine consciousness of an emperor weapon on him. Damn it. The expressions of Emperor Jin and the other two changed when they saw the monk in crimson robes formed from the murderous aura. They knew that Zhuowen's crimson abstinence violation saber was a high-level emperor weapon. In other words, The monk in crimson robes should have been a high-level emperor when he was alive. Although it was only a trace of divine consciousness, it was extremely terrifying when paired with a high-level emperor weapon. Initially, Emperor Jin and the others thought that Jun had obtained the Crimson Abstinence Violation Saber by chance. They thought that it was impossible for it to possess the divine consciousness of its previous owner. However, they were wrong. Very wrong. An emperor has fallen. Isn't this a little too crazy? After Emperor Feng was killed by the slaughtering Abstinence Violation Saber, the 9 stars that represented Emperor Feng fell from the sky and crashed heavily into the wilderness hundreds of miles away from West Path City. And the fall of a star naturally represented the fall of an Emperor Realm expert. Many of the martial artists in West Slope City were still aware of this. Therefore, when the Wind Emperor fell, West Slope City began to fall into chaos. The divine consciousness of the monk in crimson robes was released by Xiao He. Therefore, he naturally obeyed Xiao He's orders. He took a step forward and charged towards Emperor Jin and the other 2, intending to fight the 3 of them alone. What should we do, Emperor Jin? This divine consciousness is not easy to deal with. Emperor Qing and Emperor Lan stood behind Emperor Jin and said in a low voice, "Fight. We must kill that little bastard Zhuan today. Although this monk was a high-level emperor when he was alive, he is only a trace of divine consciousness now. The 3 of us have nothing to fear at all. Let's kill him together." Emperor Jin snorted coldly. Emperor Lan nodded. He had the same intention. He did not want to let Zhuan go either. Emperor Qing's eyes flickered. Emperor Qing was much calmer than Emperor Jin and Emperor Lan. He felt that the monk in crimson robes was not ordinary and was already on his guard. Supreme Jin roared angrily and took the lead to charge forward. Supreme Lan followed closely behind him while Supreme Qing quietly retreated and did not charge forward. Killing is the only way to prove one's Tao. All of you will be my stepping stones. The blood-robed monk mumbled to himself. Soon after, he slashed out with his exterminating oath-breaking blade. 1,000-foot-long blade light stretched across the void like a heavenly pillar that pierced through the heavens and earth as it shot towards Supreme Jin and Supreme Lan. Emperor Jin and Emperor Lan's expressions changed drastically. They quickly used their strongest moves in an attempt to block the 1,000-foot-long blade light. Boom, boom, boom. The 18 stars around them turned into a Milky Way realm, protecting them firmly in the center. For a moment, they managed to block the terrifying blood-red blade light. Killing is breaking the Buddhist precepts. Breaking the Buddhist precepts is enlightenment, destruction of life. The monk in crimson robes mumbled again. He gently raised the blade in his hand. Instantly, bloody scenes appeared in the void. These bloody scenes were scenes of slaughter. Some of them were beasts, some of them were people, some of them were soul beasts. The various forms of slaughter in the world were fully interpreted by this blade. The murderous oath-breaking blade was to kill all living things and destroy all obstacles. Bang bang bang. Supreme Jin and Supreme Emperor Lan's celestial river domain crumbled the moment the annihilation technique was unleashed. The 2 Emperor Realm powerhouses did not even have the chance to grunt before they exploded into 2 clouds of blood mist. Let's go! Chapter 1064. Seclusion, so powerful. Zhuan's jaw dropped as he watched Supreme Jin and Supreme Lan explode into a mist of blood. His eyes were filled with shock. Supreme Jin and Supreme Lan were both level 3 martial emperors. 2 martial emperors had fallen just like that. This is a high-level martial emperor's move. Furthermore, it was executed with the help of the monk's divine sense. Naturally, its power is extraordinary. Supreme Jin and Supreme Lan are only low-level martial emperors. It's normal for them to not be a match for him. Xiao He stood on Zhuan's shoulder, a look of pity in her eyes as she said, "Divine sense can only be used once. After this, the divine sense will disappear." What a pity! Zhuan nodded. Xiao He was right. The divine sense of an emperor could only be released once. After that, it would dissipate. It was similar to the divine sense of the first-generation sect leader of the Xiao Yao sword sect. When the time came, it would dissipate. That Azure Emperor is really fast at escaping. He didn't even try to catch up. He just escaped. Zhuowen muttered to himself with some pity. What's a pity? With your talent, you'll be able to catch up to Supreme Emperor Qing after staying in the Divine Academy for a while. When that time comes, you can return to the Qing Shen Empire and kill Supreme Emperor Qing with your own hands. Xiaohe said. I was lucky this time. If not for the monk's divine sense, I wouldn't have been able to escape so easily. Zhuowen's eyes darkened. He had miscalculated this time. Xiaohe nodded. You're still too weak. You should go into seclusion when you return. You have many good things with you. You should be able to exchange them for enough contribution points. When the time comes, you'll cultivate in the cultivation pagoda for a while. Your strength should slowly increase. Even if something like this happens again, you won't be in such a sorry state like today. Hearing this, the corners of Zhuowen's mouth revealed a trace of a bitter smile. Xiaohe was right. His current strength was indeed too weak. He had to make the best use of his time to improve his cultivation. Moreover, he had obtained many good things this time. After all, Zhuowen had obtained Supreme Jin, Supreme Lan, and Supreme Feng's spiritual rings. When the time comes, he could exchange them for enough contribution points for him to cultivate in the cultivation pagoda. However, although there were many good things in the 3 Martial Emperor's spiritual rings, there were no Martial Emperor weapons. It seemed like not every Martial Emperor realm martial artist could have Martial Emperor weapons. Let's go. When I return this time, I will immediately go into seclusion. If my cultivation does not reach the Empyrean realm, I will not come out. Zhuowen muttered in a low voice as a sharp glint appeared in his eyes. Zhuowen knew very well that if his cultivation could reach the heavenly venerate realm, his battle prowess would definitely be terrifying. At the very least, it would far surpass some of the ordinary heavenly venerates in the outer court. Thinking of this, Yun took a step forward and turned into a stream of light as he left West Path City. Many martial artists in West Path City were still in shock. 4 martial emperors had joined forces to attack a mysterious martial artist. In the end, 3 of them had died and 1 had escaped. This result was enough to make any martial artists in West Path City dumbfounded. Who is this person? After the shock, a trace of doubt rose in the minds of all the martial artists in West Path City. Who was this mysterious young man? Some sharp-eyed martial artists recognized that Yun was the young man who had killed the sect master of the Xiaoyao sect. Although many martial artists in West Path City had witnessed the battle between the sect master of the Xiaoyao sect and Zhuowen with their own eyes, no one knew the name Zhuowen. This young man had appeared in West Path City inexplicably. After that, he had caused a commotion and left without leaving a trace. Later on, the original legends about the sect master of the Xiaoyao sect in West Path City were replaced by this mysterious young man. Many martial artists in West Path City no longer talked about the sect master of the Xiaoyao sect in their free time, but the mysterious young man who had killed the sect master of the Xiaoyao sect and caused the deaths of 3 martial emperors. The rumors about the mysterious young man eventually spread in West Path City. In the end, everyone spread false rumors and deified the mysterious young man. Of course, this was all in the future. There was the sound of something breaking through the air. Zhuowen had returned to the outer courtyard of the main city. Mo Lingtian, Jia Nan and the other 2 were waiting at the entrance of the academy. When they saw Zhuowen had returned, the 4 of them relaxed. When Zhuowen had asked them to leave first, they felt that something was wrong. There might be some hidden danger in West Path City. Therefore, the 4 of them were worried about Zhuowen's safety. However, now that Zhuowen had returned safely, the 4 of them were completely relieved. Brother Zhuo, did you encounter any trouble on your way back? Mo Lingtian greeted him with a smile. No trouble at all. Zhuowen smiled. He did not plan to tell anyone about what had happened with Supreme Jin and the other 3. Although he had a good relationship with Mo Lingtian and the other 3, things would become very troublesome if they found out that the blood-red Buddhist commandment blade in Zhuowen's possession was capable of killing emperor-level experts. If news of this were to spread, no one knew who would covet his blood-red Buddhist commandment blade. Therefore, Zhuowen chose to avoid talking about it. After all, the Massacre Commandment Blade was a high-tier Emperor weapon. If news of it were to spread, it would only be disadvantageous to him. Mo Ling Tian and the other three nodded. They did not doubt Zhuowen's words. Brother Zhua, I want to increase my strength. I want to become a true expert. Jianan suddenly arrived in front of Zhuowen and said with a serious look in her eyes. Jianan, you mean? Zhuowen was stunned and asked. My sister and I are preparing to go into closed-door cultivation. We will only come out of closed-door cultivation when our cultivation levels have reached the refined state. Therefore, we may not appear for a very long time. Jianan suddenly said. Gatha also came to his side with a determined look in her eyes. After the incident at the Carefree sect, Jianan and Gatha deeply felt that they were not powerful enough. This time, they were determined to go into closed-door cultivation. Zhuowen nodded. Jianan and Gatha were very talented. In fact, in a sense, they were even more powerful than Zhuowen. After all, they were still very young. If they were given time to settle down, their cultivation levels would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. Alright, when you come out of closed-door cultivation, remember to contact me through the communication Jade Talisman. That way, I will know that you're done with your closed-door cultivation. Zhuowen nodded and smiled. Of course. Jianan nodded heavily. Oh, these are the channel opening pills that I obtained from this mission. They are quite beneficial to the tempering of one's meridians. There are 4 of them here. The 4 of you can take them. Zhuowen suddenly thought of something. With a flick of his right hand, he took out a brocade box and took out 4 jade-colored pills. He handed them to Mo Ling Tian, Jianan, and the other 2. Channel opening pills? Jianan, Mo Ling Tian, and the other 2's eyes lit up. They looked at the jade-colored pills in their palms excitedly as they mumbled to themselves. Big Brother Zhua, many thanks. We won't waste time on pleasantries. We will remember your feelings for us in our hearts. We also plan to go into closed-door cultivation this time. We will take our leave now. Jianan nodded heavily at Zhuowen. Soon after, he led Gatha and Xian Xing towards the academy. Brother Mo, what about you? Zhuowen turned his head and looked at Mo Ling Tian with a smile. I plan to do some missions and earn some contribution points. After that, I will enter the cultivation tower to cultivate for a period of time. I'm too weak. Compared to you, I am nothing. Mo Ling Tian said with a bitter smile. Originally, his cultivation was much higher than Zhuowen's. However, he was now at the initial stage of the Golden Exalted Stage, while Zhuowen was also at the initial stage of the Golden Exalted Stage. The latter had surpassed him in cultivation in such a short period of time. This made him feel even more pressured. In addition to Zhuowen's terrifying battle strength, Mo Ling Tian could only smile bitterly in his heart. However, at the same time, it also inspired him to become stronger. After all, the pressure that Zhuowen gave him could also be used as motivation. Zhuowen nodded. After the incident at the Unfettered Sect, Mo Ling Tian, Jianan, and the others realized that they were not strong enough. Zhuowen was also the same. Especially after being surrounded by Supreme Jin and the other 3, Zhuowen could not wait to increase his strength. Let's work hard together. I also plan to go into closed-door cultivation for a period of time. I hope that I can use this time to break through to the heavenly exalted stage. Zhuowen said with a faint smile. The 2 of them chatted for a while more before they went their separate ways. After all, everyone had their own cultivation methods and it was impossible to unify them. Therefore, they naturally cultivated separately. After returning to the academy, Zhuowen went to the 2nd level of the mission point. This time, he did not go there to accept missions. Instead, he wanted to exchange them for contribution points. Currently, he had the spiritual rings of Supreme Jin, Supreme Lan, and Supreme Feng. There were many precious spiritual treasures, armor skills, and other miscellaneous items in them. If he exchanged these items for contribution points, it would be a considerable amount of wealth. It would be enough for Zhuowen to cultivate in the cultivation pagoda for a long time. When Zhuowen brought the spiritual rings of the 3 supreme emperors to Bei Xian to exchange them for contribution points, Bei Xian was completely shocked. This was because all the items that Zhuowen brought were worth more than 1 million contribution points. Zhua Xiaoyu, you've struck it rich. You actually managed to get so many good items. Could it be that you've robbed an Emperor Realm expert? Bei Xian looked at Zhuowen strangely. After all, the items that Zhuowen brought out were beyond his expectations. This was not something that a mere golden exalted could take out. That was why Bei Xian said that. Zhuowen rubbed his nose and laughed awkwardly. Senior Bei Xian, you're overthinking it. With my strength, how could I rob an Supreme Emperor? These items were obtained by chance. It's not worth mentioning. Hearing this, Bei Xian pulled out his face. These items were worth more than 1 million contribution points. However, Zhuowen said that they were not worth mentioning. He wanted to give Zhuowen a slap. However, Zhuowen's words were obviously perfunctory. Bei Xian knew that Zhuowen did not want to talk about the origins of these items. Therefore, Bei Xian was smart enough not to ask. After all, everyone had their own secrets. This was a personal matter and it was not good to ask about it. After obtaining more than 1 million contribution points, Zhuowen exchanged them for some arcane secret manuals and materials. Then he left the second level under Bei Xian's strange gaze. Chapter 1065. General trend of massacre. The flow of people in the cultivation tower was still quite terrifying. Zhuowen arrived in front of the counter of the Cheongsam lady from before. The latter also recognized Zhuowen and a trace of caution appeared in her beautiful eyes. At the same time, she was constantly sneaking glances at Zhuowen. During this period of time, Zhuowen's deeds could be considered to have truly spread in the outer court. As a new student, he snatched the contribution points of the older students. Later on, he even fought with the famous genius of the Emperor Pavilion, Lu Xiang, and defeated the latter. It could be said to have caused a sensation for a period of time. It was even rumored that Zhuowen was hailed as the strongest new student in the history of the outer court. It was very likely that he would squeeze into the outer court heavenly sovereign ranking in a short period of time. With so many halos surrounding Zhuowen, the Cheongsam lady was naturally incomparably cautious. Her heart even surged with a trace of peculiarity in her beautiful eyes. After all, the future of this young man in front of her was definitely limitless. If she could rely on such a monstrous genius, there would be many benefits for her. Junior, we meet again. The Cheongsam lady's voice was somewhat nervous. Her tender fists were clenched tightly as her pair of beautiful eyes stared intently at Zhuowen. This time, I will have to trouble Senior again. Please help me open a private room on the 10th floor of the cultivation tower for half a year. I need to cultivate there for a period of time. The corner of Zhuowen's mouth slightly raised as he said with a faint smile. Looking at Zhuowen's casual expression, a trace of sadness flashed across the Cheongsam lady's beautiful eyes. However, she seemed to have thought of something and said with some shock, Junior, you intend to open a private room on the 10th floor for half a year? That would require 216,000 contribution points. Zhuowen nodded and said, yes. I do intend to stay on the 10th floor for half a year. Looking at the expression on Zhuowen's face, the Cheongsam lady knew that the former was serious. Her jade-like hand lightly tapped on the counter and a screen popped out. After opening a private room on the 10th floor for half a year, she took out a jade key and handed it to Zhuowen. After receiving the jade key, Zhuowen paid the corresponding contribution points. After bidding farewell to the Cheongsam lady, he walked towards the 10th floor of the cultivation tower. Looking at the back of the figure disappearing on the stairs, the Cheongsam lady's beautiful eyes were somewhat gloomy. A trace of a bitter smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. She was very clear about the gap between her and Zhuowen. She was afraid that she did not even have the qualifications to rely on the latter. Junior Zhuowen is getting stronger and stronger. It's only been a little over a month, and he's already able to earn so many contribution points, the Cheongsam woman muttered in a low voice, her beautiful eyes filled with envy. Arriving at the living room of the 10th floor, Zhuowen saw many figures sitting in the living room. Obviously, they were also cultivators who had come to freeload on the ice and fire energy. Zhuowen even saw many familiar faces. These familiar faces were the cultivators who had been sitting here when he first entered the 10th floor. It's Zhuowen? Low cries rang out. Many people who were close to Zhuan quietly distanced themselves from him. A month ago, the fate of the three Ling brothers and Lu Xiang was unforgettable. This one was simply a fiend. Whoever provoked him would be unlucky. Feeling the fear in the eyes of the other cultivators in the room, the corner of Zhuowen's mouth slightly curled. He did not pay too much attention to them. He took out a jade key and walked towards the corresponding private room's stone door. He opened the stone door and walked in. Half a year. Zhuowen needed to use this half a year to make a big breakthrough in his strength. It would be best if he could raise it to the heavenly sovereign realm. The energy in the cultivation tower is rich. Cultivating here is at least 10 times faster than the outside world. Zhuowen slowly walked to the praying mat in the middle of the private room and sat down. He took a deep breath and inhaled the rich energy in the surroundings into his chest. A trace of pleasure flashed across his eyes. What are your plans for the next half a year? Inside the cultivation room, Xiao He appeared in front of Zhuowen without any scruples. She crossed her paws and asked in an indifferent tone, "I'll raise my strength first. Also, the techniques I have are too heterogeneous. I plan to integrate some of them." Zhuowen said with a smile, "You're right. Your techniques are indeed too heterogeneous. Although they're quite powerful, you're unable to unleash their full potential. If you can integrate all these techniques, you'll definitely be able to unleash an extremely powerful force." Xiao He nodded. "Let the little fellow out first. This cultivation room contains ice and fire energy. The ice energy within will be of great help to the little fellow's strength." Zhuowen waved his right hand and the profound soul ice butterfly immediately appeared in front of him. Soon after, it intimately rubbed itself against Zhuowen's chest, its eyes filled with dependence. Zhuowen patted the little fellow's head and instructed it. The little fellow reluctantly flew to the side of the cultivation room where the ice energy was rich. It began to absorb the rich ice energy in the cultivation room and began to cultivate by itself. A trace of satisfaction appeared in Zhuowen's eyes as he watched the profound soul ice butterfly quietly absorbing the ice energy. The profound soul ice butterfly's cultivation was currently at the peak of the Xuanzuan realm. It should be able to make a breakthrough soon. If the profound soul ice butterfly's cultivation could reach the golden sovereign level, it would be of great help to the current Zhuan. However, all of this required the profound soul ice butterfly's cultivation to make a breakthrough. After withdrawing his gaze, Zhuan flicked his finger and took out the slaughtering oath-breaking blade from his spirit ring. His eyes flickered as he said, "This slaughtering oath-breaking blade contains an extremely powerful slaughtering chi. It faintly matches the aura of my Azura blood spear. Perhaps I can combine the two together." The Tao of slaughter is different and leads to the same destination. If you can combine the two together, relying on the might of a high-grade emperor weapon like the slaughtering oath-breaking blade, you'll be able to control the power of the world. It will definitely be much more powerful than your Azura blood spear. However, you're an expert with a spear. If you switch to using a blade now, you might not be able to get used to it at first. Xiao He nodded in agreement. All the weapons in the world lead to the same destination. As long as I can control the power of the world, I'll be able to switch between spear and blade aura at will. Zhuowen's eyes shone brightly as he said. In fact, Zhuowen had long realized that his methods were too heterogeneous. If he could combine them, he would definitely have the power to transform. However, he didn't have much time before. Now that he had calmed down, Zhuowen could study these things properly. "You brat, you're quite creative." Xiao He opened her mouth but found that she had no words to refute Zhuowen's words. She could only say this in embarrassment. "Let's try it first. After all, this is just my idea. Whether it will work or not, we'll only know after we put it into practice." Zhuowen shook his head and sat cross-legged on the praying mat. As he guided the surrounding ice and fire energy into his body to refine his meridians, he silently comprehended the slaughter origin within the slaughter abstinence violation blade. At the same time, Zhuowen also began to silently circulate the Azura blood spear aura within his body in an attempt to combine the two. Time was like a wild horse that had escaped its reins. A month passed in the blink of an eye. At this moment, Zhuowen was sitting cross-legged on the praying mat. Blood surged out from his body, making him look extremely terrifying and ferocious. Zhuan suddenly opened his eyes. Suddenly, a blood-red thread faintly appeared in his eyes. This blood-red thread ran from the corner of his eyes to the end of his eyes, like a bloody slit. It looked extremely strange. Water. Aura. With a soft chant, Zhuan suddenly took a step forward. Waves of blood-red aura surged out and filled the entire cultivation room.